Hey, yo, what's good, what's good, what's good? Welcome to Reflections of a DJ, the R.O.A.D podcast presented by DJ City and Beat Source. We have invaded LA. We are at the W, Hollywood.
Yeah.
I'm one of your hosts, DJ Crooked. We have Jamie the Great.
Yeah.
Big shout out to our brother Never Forever. Rest in peace, bro. And we have some special co-hosts with us. Of course, we got, Brooklyn's beloved, DJ Goldfinger in the building.
Yo, what up, world?
And we have, also Brooklyn, one of Brooklyn's finest, DJ Ross One.
You're gonna get me in trouble for that.
Yeah. by way of Ohio.
Ross. Yeah.
Yeah.
Now we have the most legendary guests that we could have on this podcast. This is like even beyond our expectations of having this guest.
Yes.
We are so honored to have him on. He's one half of one of the greatest production duos of all time, one of the greatest musicians and songwriters of all time. Mm-hmm. He and his partner are 5-time Grammy Award winners. They're Grammy Producer of the Year, 1987. They have countless #1 Billboard hits, Songwriters Hall of Fame, Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. This man and his partner have created the soundtrack to all our lives, and we're so honored to have him here. He's also a fellow DJ.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I definitely want to talk about that. We have the great Jimmy Jam.
DJ Jimmy Jam.
I love that.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for coming through.
Thanks for having me.
And big shout to Elijah from Late Development. Coordinator.
Elijah.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
You guys just recently saw each other in New York.
Yeah. You cats out the back, man.
Yeah.
He had a little interview symposium where he was talking about his book. And I had the pleasure of playing tunes for the man.
Yeah. It was I saw like recap videos of it, Jam, and you were having like a storyteller's moment.
Yeah.
Where you were behind a piano and a keyboard. And
amazing, yo.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah, it was kind of set up, and Elijah did a great job of setting it up. But he set it up where it was partly an interview and definitely some storytelling, but then there was a piano set up right next to me. So, he said, go to the piano and play. It's one thing to explain it. It's another thing to actually play. So we did a little bit of that. And then we rocked the tunes and people started singing, and then people started coming up on stage. The girl from Jeanne came up and started singing.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, that was pretty good.
And actually cool. We did a little mashup of their song, Sending My Love, I think is what it's called.
Yes,
right? And we did that, but then I put the music to tell me if you still care with it. And it was a nice little mashup, So it was
a DJ thing.
Great time.
A DJ thing.
That is definitely a DJ thing. Yes,
Yeah.
sir. Yes, sir.
Jam, you've been like really busy. Like we just had the Grammys.
Yep.
And I know you're on the board for the Grammys.
Yeah, I'm the TV committee. I'm on the chair of the TV
committee.
Yes, sir.
And we just saw the Grammys, and it's very different Grammys this year than before.
Yeah.
What were some of the changes were you involved in anything, or did you speak on?
Yeah. So I think the biggest change that you've seen, or part of the changes with the Recording Academy, is first of all, people need to know it's a membership organization. You basically have to be kind of in the music business. You have to be a music creator in some sense in order to be part of the board of that. But what's changed is you now can get invited. So that now makes a lot more diverse population. Our women, I know there's a lot more women. I think we mentioned there's probably 3,000 or 4,000 more women now in the Academy than there was in the last 5. This has been the last 5 years. This has happened since Harvey Mason Jr. has been our CEO. 66% are new members. And the thing I always thought about a membership organization is you're only as good as your members. So I think if you have the right members, then I think the decisions that get made are a lot more relevant to what music is. And this year on the show, I would say that the thing that probably speaks the loudest is the Best New Artist category this year.
Right.
Yes.
Where you had everybody from Khruangbin on one side of it, of things, to obviously, a Sabrina Carpenter or a Chapel Roan, to a Shabuzi, to a Doechii. I just thought that category really represented where the membership of the Recording Academy is now.
Yeah.
And it made me feel really good to see that. And also to see all of them represented on the show. It's the first time on the show that all the nominees in the Best New Artist category got a chance to perform.
Great performances, too.
Yeah, they all killed it, each in their own way. That was what was so cool. It definitely is an argument. Like, I always have the argument with people where they go, man, music isn't like it used to be, and, all that. And it's like, yeah, that's a good observation, but I think that there is really great music out there. It's probably a little tougher to find. The curation systems are a little different, but I think that's a good example of 8 artists that I think watching any of those artists, you don't think that they're not going to be around. They're all going to be around making music, and I think they're relevant. So I think that's a good thing.
What's good, everyone? This is P-Dot from Reflections of a DJ, the R.O.A.D podcast. Whether you're just discovering the podcast or a day one listener, if you've been loving the content and want more, here's your chance to support the pod, get closer to the action, and unlock exclusive content by joining our Patreon. For just $5 a month, you can join our Tier 1 R.O.A.D subscription. This is for our loyal listeners who want early access to new episodes 3 to 4 weeks ahead, your name in the credits of every video episode, and access to our exclusive R.O.A.D edits pack. For the hardcore supporters, we've got our Tier 2 R.O.A.D for Life subscription for just $10 a month. This is the all-in package. You'll get everything from Tier 1, plus a monthly bonus episode, early access to our exclusive R.O.A.D 10 and R.O.A.D Talk interviews, behind-the-scenes content, our In the Crate series, along with unreleased projects. This is your chance to support the podcast and get more of the content that you love. Join the family today at patreon.com/R.O.A.D podcast. Check the link in our descriptions. We appreciate you, and let's keep this journey going.
Did you have any favorites? Any artists, new artists that like
Of all of those, my personal favorite is Khruangbin. Khruangbin's my favorite band.
They're not really new though.
Well, but they're new as far as gaining prominence.
Gotcha.
So it's not the idea of a best new artist is really when an artist begins
Just
to
makes
gain
that breakthrough.
it kind of has that breakthrough moment.
Gotcha.
And Khruangbin had that in the last year with the records that they've been doing on their own. And they're 10 years in. As a matter of fact, they're actually working on an album now to kind of celebrate 10 years of making music. But yeah, some people make it literally overnight, and some people overnight is 10 years.
Yeah.
And they're one of those groups. So I was really excited about them. But really that whole class. But Khruangbin they're just my personal favorites and now
groovy,
friends.
man.
So
Groovy.
yeah, I love them.
Yeah.
I love them.
it's been kind of chaotic, and there's been a big tragedy here.
Yes.
Yes. Here in LA.
Yeah.
What was the temperature? What was the feeling when you guys were organizing everything for the Grammys? In light of all these like LA wildfires.
Obviously it's a tough decision, because a lot of shows, it is kind of award season in LA. And so a lot of the shows chose to cancel, and which we totally respected. But I think music has always been, I'll use an example, when the New Orleans floods happened, Hurricane Katrina. Yeah. There's an organization called Music Cares that goes in and basically to help musicians. It's basically the music community helping musicians. And we knew that it was very important back in that time to make sure we got instruments back in musicians' hands.
Right.
Because first thing you do whenever you want to raise some money, you throw a concert. So if the people who play the instruments and are the artists can't do their job, then we can't raise money and we can't raise spirits. So we thought in the Grammys that it was important that our show go on, one, because it's our fundraiser for everything that we do, what I call the other 364 days a year. You know us as a one night a year award show, but the other 364 days a year, there's music education, there's advocacy in Washington, making sure that creators get paid correctly, and all of those things are happening. So anyway, we felt we needed to do the show, plus we knew that we basically kind of employ, either directly or indirectly, probably around 6,500 to 7,000 people whose jobs would be affected if the show didn't go on. We also thought that it was important that not that the show necessarily changed so much, because it should be entertaining, it should be celebrating the music makers.
Right.
But my analogy was always like, if you have a really bright picture and you put a bright frame around it, this is a really bright picture, which is the Grammys, but around it we maybe do a matte black frame or something a little simpler. And I think the show was framed in the awareness of the fires, trying to fundraise, trying to raise money, but also it still needed to be a very entertaining show.
Right.
And so the choices are things like, for instance, at one point in time, we thought, Sabrina Carpenter would probably be a great opener because her thing was so big,
Right.
it was, and kind of comedic and kind of cool.
Yeah.
And that was one of those things that we said, maybe we shift it a little differently. And then we did the I Love LA opening and sort of that. So anyway, those were kind of the decisions that were made kind of throughout the show to do that. But hopefully the show got across to people, and it seems the feedback that we've gotten so far has all been very positive, and definitely a place. The Grammys is one of those few places that, you can stream and watch everything in your own time, but it is one of those events kind of like a Super Bowl or type of thing where everybody gets together. It's families, it's, you know, people, they watch it together.
Right.
And you have those discovery moments of people that you don't know. You have those moments of people who, you know, like the Quincy tribute and seeing Stevie Wonder and Herbie Hancock together and those types of things. So anyway, you just create those moments that everybody can share. And
there was a lot of star power this Grammys. I mean, like everybody seemed like they wanted to show up. They
wanted to be there.
Yeah.
Yes, sir. Yeah, no, that's absolutely true. We had people that initially were not a no, but just, you know, they didn't want to perform or they didn't, you know, whatever. And that they turned into literally the week of the show. They turned into, I'd love to do something if we can figure something out. So yeah, it worked out very well.
Wow, that's great. I know you had a fundraiser with the Black Music Action Coalition.
Yes.
I kind of wanted to, I know that you and Terry Lewis, you have like a music makers grant.
Yes.
That's attached to this event.
Yes. So a couple of years ago when we were inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, we did a dinner the night before the ceremony, and we gave a grant to a music maker. And the idea was just that we want to kind of give back to our community, to our songwriting community, to our producing community. It was important to do that and to use the platform of the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame as kind of the framework to do that. That was very successful. So then we did a following year, and the following year we awarded actually 2 grants. And both of the people that won the grants, interestingly enough, they have actually made some really good music and actually, you know, done very well. So this year we wanted to do once again the same thing and kind of, you know, it's still thinking about whether it's the right thing to do. But once again, we added the component this year really to try to give back to the communities affected by the fire, and particularly Altadena, which is an historically Black area. And we wanted to make sure that we used our platform in order to give, once again, some hope. We had a young drummer who had lost his drum set and lost his instruments, that we were able to get him a new drum set to allow him to play. And I encouraged, I mean, my message, and I said this because I do the premiere telecast at the Grammys, which is the awards that we give out before the, you know, the CBS telecast. And I told everybody that I think as creative people, we're angels on earth. We're really the thing that keeps it sane down here, whether we're playing music, whether we're writing music, whatever we're doing. And I said, so now, as we lose our angels on earth, like the Quincy Joneses and people like that, it's like it's incumbent upon us to grow our wings a little bigger and flap them a little harder. So that was kind of the message we gave to the creatives this year who got the grants. Make that next, you know, We Are the World, or that next That's What Friends Are For, or kind of the song in our catalog and the Jam and Lewis catalog, Optimistic, which we always feel is our favorite song that we've ever done. So, you know, I think that there's a responsibility to do that, and we had a great turnout. And it was the first time that a lot of people got a chance to even be together since the fires, because everybody has been kind of spread out. And so it was a great gathering place where people could share stories and that. And it was a wonderful event. And yeah, thank you for asking about it. It's something we look forward to doing and continuing to do. And, you know, once again, we're so proud of the music makers that get the grants and they work so hard, you know.
No, I think it's actually like, it's really important. Yeah. And I'm wondering, I wanted to ask you, well, 2 questions, right? Yeah. Do you feel like there is a scarcity of, you know, musicians or artists or producers and music makers that aren't kind of passing the torch or helping the younger artists? You know, there was an acceptance speech by Chappell Roan that was talking about the labels.
Yes.
And how, you know, she was like broke and there's no support, there's no health or insurance or anything. Yes. And, you know, you're mentioning these grants, and, you know, the grants offer like financial support, mentorship, studio time, networking, you know, specifically for Black music producers and songwriters.
Well, what I'll say about that, I think sometimes you have to show people what to do. I don't think it's a thing where people don't care. I think they have to have maybe the mechanism in place to show. If you show them, they can do it. I'll give you a good example. Last year when we did the event, Victoria Monet showed up just as a guest. Wow. Just came, you know, just because we were big fans of hers. And I loved her album. And I remember I had DM'd her a couple of times and I just said, I love your album and stuff. So anyway, she just came. And she got so caught up in kind of the spirit of the event that she said, I'm going to do a studio session with whoever your grant people are. Wow. And she literally, and so she literally did that and spent a couple of hours with them in the studio, but not only worked with them, but also mentored them and gave them advice in doing that. And then she posted it, I believe, on her social media. It might have gone up on the BMAC social medias also. But then everybody all said, wait, I want to do that. I want to have some people come to my studio and do that. And I've told people that like play an instrument or do, or DJ or whatever, and they go, how can I get involved? And I go, go back to your school, wherever you went to school,
right,
and ask to sit in with the music program or ask to give a speech or a talk or something, that kind of stuff's important, So I think it's just showing people the way. Once they see it, then they get it, and then they're like, I want to do that. I want to be involved in that.
No, I think it's great.
Well, speaking of mentors and, particularly like Quincy Jones, we lost them this year, last year rather.
Yeah.
Your mentor, the Godfather.
The Black Godfather.
Clarence Avant.
Yes.
So, I guess getting that tutelage from him, shaped informed your path, how you give back as well to younger artists. Tell us about Clarence Avant.
Yeah, what is that?
It's like a jackhammer or something.
This is one of those things that until you start actually taping, it's all quiet. And as soon as you start, then it goes, man. No, but it's cool though. I mean, to me, that's what's going to make the episode unique. It's just like your question, it's like, what if you ever get something done and then there's all of a sudden there's a noise or there's something, but just like, it becomes, and also when you leave things in that are mistakes, it becomes intentional. Like, oh, they meant to do that. That was genius. Oh, that was genius how they did that. It's like, okay. Matter of fact, I'll tell you guys, I mean, I won't get off a track of whatever track we're on, but I'll tell you the control recording story, because that's a good one. I was about
to say that.
Okay,
with Janet.
Yeah, because that's a good one of a mistake that actually turned it.
Now you had, because those are like the hardest, loudest, harshest drums that you've ever heard on an R&B record.
Mm.
But they sound so good. It knocks. I mean, like when you play What Have You Done For Me Lately, and you play Nasty in a club, you hear the difference.
Yeah.
I mean, you really hear it. You feel it.
Yeah.
Was intentional?
No. So that was okay. Well, yes. Yes, it was intentional, but it was actually a mistake. So the story of that, so the story of the way those drums sound is that Terry and I had always watched Prince record. And when Prince recorded, he always recorded with the VU meters always in the red. Like everything was always like pinned. And Prince always said the reason he did that was because he wanted things to sound frantic, right? He said that when your ear hears distortion, it automatically thinks something is loud.
Yeah, the
right?
frequencies.
Yeah. So that was his thought. So when we started doing Control, we had an engineer that walked out on us. And I will say, actually, when the engineer walked out, we were doing the album we did before that was actually Sherelle's album with Saturday Love on it.
Right.
So we learned how to record with Sherelle. Sherelle was like our guinea pig, so to speak, right?
What do you mean you learned?
So back in the day, there was always an engineer, and you depended on them to get everything down on tape in the correct way. And you had what were called patch bays. There's virtual patch bays now, but there was literally physically, a bunch of wires that you had to plug in to get the output of this into the input of this and that type of thing. And it looked like, a bunch of spaghetti. It looked like a bunch of pasta. It was just, there was millions of them. And when you looked at a soundboard, you looked at, 100, 200, 300 knobs. And you're going, but the sound engineer was the one that knew how to work all that stuff.
Right.
So when the sound engineer walked out on us, we were like, Terry and I were like, we're never going to be dependent on somebody again like that. And we're going to learn it. We're going to learn what it is. And so, like I say, Sherelle was kind of the guinea pig, but we did our thing. So when we got around to Control, we said, okay, we can engineer this ourselves, right? So when we were doing the tracks, of course, we're pinning everything in the red like Prince did, doing like Prince. And so when we were done with everything, we had Steve Hodge come up. Steve Hodge was the first engineer that we worked with in L.A., and actually mixed our first big hit, Just Be Good to Me, by the SOS Band. Yeah. So he came to town, and we put on the first tape, presses play, and he goes, who recorded that? And we're patting ourselves on the back. We're like, yeah, we did that. We did that. Yeah. He said, it's way too loud. And we said, yeah, that's the way Prince does it. Everything's in the red. And then this may make sense to your listeners. So like, 0 on a VU meter is 0, right? Mm-hmm. And so Steve Hodge said Prince's machines were probably set up where 0 meant 0. He said, oh my God. I love it. I love it.
Actually, now it's a part of the episode.
It is a part of that. It's going to be known as the Jackhammer episode.
Where's Steve Hodge at?
Where's Steve Hodge at?
Jimmy Jam and the Jackhammer.
Jimmy Jam just has that energy to make anything good.
Sound good.
It doesn't matter what problem it is. He's just gonna make it. He's gonna make it into a positive.
That's right. Pay no attention. I'm gonna sample it and loop it.
Yeah,
and it's gonna be a hit song. It's gonna be pounding. It's gonna be great. Yeah, man.
So all your recordings and everything was just like
way in the red.
No, it was all in the red. But what Steve said was, he said 0 means 0 on most machines, but your machine is set up at +6. So when you hit 0 on your machine, you're already 6 dB louder than it's supposed to be. So the fact now that you're pinning it at that point, it's crazy.
You're double pinning it.
Yeah. So, but anyway,
Spinal Tap goes
right. Exactly. Yeah. But that's the reason that record sounds like that, and it became sort of the standard for records. I was talking to well, he's not Jesus. He looks like Jesus. The record producer. He's in
Rick Rubin.
No. Oh, but that's a good guess, though. Rick Rubin's son. No, he's younger than Rick. Okay. He's like the guy. Like, he does Taylor Swift. Not
Luca?
Taylor Swift, but
Jack Antonoff?
No, not Jack Antonoff.
Like
oh my God! By the way, I always said there should be a game show called Everything But the Name.
Oh wow!
Because when you get old like me, when you like getting AARP and senior discounts and stuff,
oh shit,
you can remember everything but somebody's name.
Oh wow!
I can tell you what they look like, what they were wearing, what kind of car they drive. I can't remember the name.
Wow!
But he did. Well, he's the part of the Swedish mafia. I know callers are calling in right now. It's
like Max Martin.
Max Martin, thank you. Max Martin. Ding, 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 ding.
Nice. Ross Swan with the same.
Max Martin.
Yeah.
Max Martin said that they used to, when they're doing Backstreet Boys and they're doing NSYNC and Britney and those records back in the day, our records were the records that were the blueprint for those. They'd put those on in the studio and go, man, get that drum sound like that, get that bass sound like that. So that's why the Swedish records were so funky.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Wow. So wait, I have a question. Why did the engineer walk out?
So the engineer walked out. So here's what it was. There was a studio called Creation Audio. It was down the basement of a house. Mm-hmm. And when Terry and I went back to Minneapolis, because we had come to LA for a little while, we were working on the R.O.A.D record, the first R.O.A.D album. And we went down this basement and they had this beautiful little studio and it was no pressure. And that's what we liked about it. It just kind of felt like, we don't have to worry about watching the clock and spending a bunch of money. So anyway, the engineer there was really good. So we decided we was going to start our own studio, Terry and I. Mm-hmm. So we brought them on and we said, we'll just partner up on do this studio, right? So anyway, when we did it, I remember our accountant said, okay, wait, you guys are partners? And we said, yeah. And they said, okay, and you guys are buying the building, you're buying the equipment, what are they doing as the partnership? And I said, oh, they're going to engineer. And he said, well, that's not a partnership. That's like, you guys have everything. Yeah, you just hire them to work.
Yeah.
It's not a partner because they're not putting anything into it. And we said, okay. So when we said that, the one that was the engineer, because it was an engineer and his partner was like out basically. And he just, in solidarity with him, just said, I'm boycotting and that. And so that's what it is. The interesting thing is that studio still exists, but now it's in Minneapolis. It's like a classic studio. And we actually filmed, we're doing a Jam and Lewis documentary, and we actually filmed at that studio. And with that same guy, the guy that we fell out with, whose name's Steve Weiss. But Steve Weiss did a bunch of our records back in the day. And anyway, we're totally good now and totally loved working at his studio. And my dad actually recorded at his studio a while back, which was pretty cool. So yeah, so it all goes full circle if you just allow it to, man. It's all, God's plan.
He just slipped this in. That he's
Pause. Wait. Whoa.
All right.
Goldie.
He's doing a doc.
Doing the doc.
Guess who's doing the doc?
Who?
You'll never guess.
Questlove?
Questlove.
Shout out to Questlove.
Well, no, Quest isn't doing our doc.
His company.
Actually, no. Actually, what Questlove is doing is he's involved with a documentary that we're working on for Gamble and Huff.
Ooh.
Okay.
Like that.
Okay, that's
and
awesome.
actually, wait. And I should say, it's Gamble, Huff, and Tom Bell. It's the Mighty Three.
Ooh.
Wow.
So
Exclusive.
he's involved. It is exclusive because it hasn't been announced yet. It's just a rumor that I heard. But anyway, allegedly. But the interesting thing was there was no way we could do a documentary about Philadelphia's finest without having
Somebody
Questlove
from
as a part of it.
Philadelphia.
Now, I said to Quest, I said, man, that would be like if they were making a Minneapolis documentary. If you were making a Minneapolis documentary and you said, oh, I don't need Jimmy and Terry. It's like, no,
Right.
can't make a Philadelphia documentary without Questlove being involved. So anyway, that is something, like I say, it's not announced, but allegedly the rumor is we're going to be directing a Gamble and Huff. But I will say that the executive producer of our documentary, the Jam and Lewis documentary, is a guy named Peter Afterman, who's done some pretty great documentaries. The Mr. Dynamite, the James Brown documentary, if you've seen that.
that was wow.
Or It Might Get Loud with the guitar players with Jack White and all those guys. I mean, so he's a really good music guy, but his thing is that he likes music creatives to be involved.
Mm-hmm.
And the documentary that he's currently working on or currently finishing up is a Curtis Mayfield documentary.
Wow.
That's directed by her. The singer Her.
Wow.
And I've sat in on some of those sessions, and it's interesting because imagine a conversation kind of like what we're having, but if you're having a conversation and you're Her and you're sitting with a guitar on your lap and you're having a conversation with Ernie Isley about how Curtis Mayfield affected the way he plays guitar.
Wow.
Or he's showing her the way that Curtis tuned the guitar in a different way, which is why he could get certain notes in that.
Right.
So it's a really beautiful documentary. It's actually going to premiere at South by Southwest next month.
Oh, wow.
And
that's amazing.
It's very beautiful. So we're happy to be, in business with people that really have, a passion and a love for music and telling music stories, but allowing the musicians to help tell those stories.
That's right, because only the musicians know those finer details. Of
Yes.
just these little things like we were talking about with the drums for Janet Jackson's Control.
Mm-hmm.
We have to go back to, we
Wait.
got cut off by a jackhammer
Right.
when we were
Yeah.
getting into the Clarence Avon.
No, this is all
story.
going to stay in here.
Okay.
Okay.
Oh, you're just running it straight through.
I'm going to take the tracks and I'm going to send it to my boy who masters, and he'll
Yeah,
try
he
to
can
break
probably get it
down.
out. Yeah, he
bring
can
it
probably
down.
get it out.
Yeah.
Steve Hodge.
Yeah, exactly. Steve the GOAT.
Yeah.
He's the GOAT.
What's up, roadies? I'm Fresh One from Distinct Mastering. I've been DJing clubs for over 25 years, and I know sound matters. Whether it's a podcast, remix, DJ edit, or your next release. You ever drop a huge track and your blend or edit just doesn't hit the same? Maybe it's quieter, weak, distorted, or just lacks punch and clarity. That's what happens when mastering gets overlooked. That's where I come in. At Distinct Mastering, I make sure your tracks have loudness without squashing, punch without pumping, and clarity without harshness. Even R.O.A.D Podcast calls me when they run into audio issues. When Jimmy Jam recorded in LA, a jackhammer outside nearly ruined the episode. They sent it to me, I cleaned it up, and made it sound pristine. And when it comes to music, the difference is just as crucial.
Before mastering, after mastering.
Want to hear the difference? I'll master a free stereo sample for you. Just mention the code ROAD when inquiring at distinctmastering.com. And if you love it, get 50% off that first master.
By the way, since we mentioned Steve Hodge, can I just say real quick, the way we found Steve Hodge was back in the day when there were liner notes on albums and stuff, and you could actually see, where they were recorded, who engineered them, and all those types of things. I was an avid liner note reader, and I remember all of the records that I loved, Steve Hodge was the mixer on. And it was back in the Solar Records days. So if you're, the Whispers, Shalimar, Lakeside, he was doing all of those records, Steve Hodge was. And so when we sought out an engineer in LA, we knew he worked at a studio called Larrabee. And we went to Larrabee and we found Steve Hodge and we said, you got to mix our song. But what we learned, which I never knew, but we interviewed Steve for our documentary. And he said, because what I remember is we walked in, Would Just Be Good to Me. That was the song, right? And the night that Prince fired us at Sunset Sound, he fired us for doing other acts. We literally went to Larrabee where Steve was. and heard, and we walked in and Steve said, "What's wrong with you guys?" And we said, "Oh, we just got fired from the Time." And he said, "I don't think you guys have anything to worry about because this record here is a smash." And he presses play, and Just Be Good to Me comes on with the Steve Hodge mix, coming out these big speakers. But what Steve told us, which we never knew, he knew of us because we had done a song with the SOS band earlier called High Hopes. We wrote the song but didn't produce it. Leon produced it. And when he mixed the song, he asked Leon, he said, "Who wrote this song?" And he said, "Oh, these guys, Jimmy Jam and Terry Lewis." And Steve said, "Wow, I really like them. They're really good." So when he heard that we had this song coming, he said I spent every moment I could to make sure this was going to blow you guys away.
Wow.
He said, "You guys didn't think I knew who you were, but I totally knew because I asked Leon." They asked Leon. He said, "Who are these guys?" He said he knew that we had something, and he really tried to impress us, and he certainly impressed us. Yeah.
Wow.
The intro to that song is maybe the most. It's such an epic intro for an R&B song.
Yeah.
At that time, it was always intended to have like this 32-bar crazy 64-bar intro. That was always in it.
I always one of the things Prince told us was that you should try to make visual records. He wasn't into music video at that, or there wasn't really a lot of music video back at that time, but his whole thing was that you should take people on a journey. And I love film. Like I was always into film. Like I'd go see a couple of movies a day. Like on my lunch break, I'd go see a movie, or on my dinner break, I'd go see a movie. So I like the whole idea of the anticipation of something building up and then just going, and just getting your attention.
Right.
Like I always like the idea of that. And so that was kind of intentional, for sure, to always have records that had also dynamics too, because dynamics were important. If there was a breakdown or a part that got louder or softer, people said back it was. So here's funny. Now everything you could, of course, can see the sound waves, but when I was growing up, you couldn't see sound waves. It was just you were just using your ears to listen, right?
Yeah.
And I remember we sent something out for a remix. Somebody did a remix, and they said, "I love the way your sound waves look." And I said, "What does that even mean?" but what it meant was a lot of people's sound waves basically were just like a kind of a bar across. They didn't get louder. They didn't get softer. Nothing happened. But they said your songs all kind of go like this, and then they get bigger and bigger as they go. And
Different colors too.
Yeah. And that was always intentional because that was the records that we grew up loving. All those records did that. They kind of took you on a journey and told a story. And I think a lot of times with a loop-based record, which we've done with Rhythm Nation and stuff like that, but you take the loop and then you do it, and then if you don't do anything else to it, you've basically heard the whole song in the first 30 seconds of the song. Mm-hmm. So to me, it's fine to use the loop as the foundation, but then let's put some other things over it. Let's bring in different instruments and even drum machine fills. Like we would use a drum machine on stuff, but then the fills a lot of times we do just by hand. And what it did is it made a performance rather than just a recording. It was kind of like a performance.
Goldie, you were bringing it up. These like staple, like like Jimmy Jam, Terry Lewis sounds and sound effects.
Your claps. The claps was a signature thing.
Yeah.
Your bridges.
So we would put in a beat in the drum machine, and that would be our basic beat, and we'd play for 6-7 minutes or whatever. Things were always long back in those days, and but then like on Just Be Good to Me, I played it for 7 minutes. Yeah, I mean there was no sequencers, or I didn't even know how to work a sequencer. That's the funny thing. I never knew how to work a sequencer. So
did everything always start with the drum?
No. A lot of times it would start on. It could start on a piano if it was more of a ballad type song. It could start on a synthesizer. It didn't really matter. It just was kind of. Sometimes the beats. I'll tell you a couple songs where the beats were. Well, I'll tell you one song in particular that the beat drove it was Alexander O'Neal had a song called Fake. Mm-hmm. And that was definitely the drums that drove that. That was the drum beat was like, okay, we know what this needs to be.
Now, what were you using at the time? Were you using like certain machines at the time, like XP and stuff like that, or?
Yeah, so we were before the XP. So we were using first of all, the original LM1 Lindrum, which is what Prince used back in the day. And then they had the second version, which was just called the Lindrum. And so the Lindrum actually is what powered a lot of control and that. We also used an Oberheim DMX drum machine, and that was like the Saturday Love and those types of, so the Alexander O'Neal stuff, that was mostly that drum machine. So those were the kind of the staple, and of course the 808, the Roland 808, which was Just Be Good to Me. And No One's Gonna Love You, which is my favorite SOS song. Yeah. So, yeah, a matter of fact, I love when you played that the other night.
Man. Yeah. Those are my favorites.
Yeah, man.
So you were using basically the technology of the day.
Yeah.
And, your rise of coming up was 83, 84, 85. So this is like right in comparison with the hip hop movement.
Yeah.
Because those machines that you were saying, the SP, the Lindrum, the 808 and stuff like that, these are what hip hop guys were using.
Yeah.
So it goes to me and my man Ross was talking about New Jack Swing.
Yep.
You guys were making records the same time, using these same machines, almost creating the same sound. Tell me more about your perspective on the New Jack Swing.
Well, like, we were having a semi-heated discussion.
It wasn't that.
I like it. Semi-heated. I like that. Okay.
It was a DJ discussion.
It was a DJ discussion.
DJ discussion.
Those are always semi-heated, aren't they?
And we were making the proclamation that you gave birth to New Jack Swing.
Okay. I'm not going to argue with that.
Yeah.
I'm not going to argue with that. So what I'll say about that
No one was arguing on the other side of that.
No one.
By the way, we were all in agreement on that.
it's okay.
Part. There was no.
But we were having the conversation, and we were, Goldie was bringing up you being responsible for New Jack Swing, and then we were kind of going back with the records, and we're like Teddy Riley.
Yep.
But no, he was like, no, it was really with.
I think Janet. I think the drums on Nasty, those drums on
What Have You Done For Me Lately?
Yeah, man, those are pretty much hip hop drums.
Yeah.
Maybe it was those +6 drums that really
it was
started everything.
Definitely the +6 drums. So here's my theory on New Jack Swing. I think that for me, Nasty definitely has that New Jack Swing sound. Although of course there was no such thing as New Jack Swing,
Right.
But it definitely had that sound to it. It was interesting. I remember being at a club with L.A. and Babyface, as a matter of fact. And I remember I Want Her came on, Keith Sweat. And I remember when I heard it, I said, that reminds me of Nasty, the little stuff. And then Babyface, I think, said, yeah, well, that's not him, but it's a guy named Teddy Riley that produced the record, whatever. And I said, oh, Teddy Riley. I said, okay, I got to get with him. He's like, cool. So
Who's this guy jacking my shit?
yeah, right. So
I better meet him quickly.
well, it's
We all can read between the lines.
Yeah.
It's like, that reminds me a little bit.
No, it reminds me a little bit of. It
something
sounds
I
like
made.
slightly influenced by. So I always thought that. Now the funny thing is, when I talked to Teddy, I used to have a show on Sirius XM, an interview show, and Teddy was one of my people that I interviewed, and I asked him about that, and he said that in his house he wasn't allowed to even listen to like R&B music, so that wasn't really like an influence on him. Although I've talked to other people around Teddy who have told a different story, but that's okay. I'll let Teddy be Teddy. But the thing I will say is, Teddy is the king of New Jack Swing. There's no question about it. Right. Whether we planted the seeds for it, okay, yeah, I think we're probably part of that. But he was the one that popularized it, and I think made it its own genre in the R&B world and hip hop world, right where they meet. The other thing is, so I got into a heated discussion with DJs about the fact that, okay, so the foundation, I think most people agree that the foundation of hip hop is James Brown. It's the James Brown, whether it's Funky Drummer, whether it's the tambourine from Think Lynn Collins, all of those elements really were kind of the foundation of hip hop, or the basis of hip hop. But I had a theory that the kind of foundation of New Jack Swing, at least in the Teddy Riley part of it, was Casey and the Sunshine Band. So people said, everybody went, oh, you're crazy. Why do you think that? And I said, because Casey and the Sunshine Band had a song called I Get Lifted. And it was both Casey did it, and then George McCrae did it, right? And that was the.
That's the George McCrae version you're humming.
Yeah,
right there.
okay. Yeah, that's the George McCrae version, right?
Yeah, the one.
So everybody said, "Oh, you're crazy." So anyway, when I interviewed Teddy Riley, I said, "Okay, I got this crazy theory." I said, "Tell me about this." So I told him the theory about, that. And he said, oh my God. He said, okay. He said, I won her. And I said, yeah. And he said, the bass line in that song? And I said, yeah. And he starts singing and goes, boom, boom, doom, 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 doom. He said, you know what that bass line is? He said, that's the way I like it, Casey and the Sunshine Band.
Wow.
And he said, nobody's ever thought of that before. I said, no, I told people. So anyway, I Get Lifted. If you listen to the I Get Lifted sample, you'll hear it in a bunch of...
He used it a lot too.
He used it a lot. I'm telling you, it was the foundation of what he did. So anyway, that was my theory. But the reason I know that kind of stuff, or I feel that kind of stuff, is from being a DJ.
Right.
Yeah.
That goes back to my DJ days and listening to so many records and getting a chance to study them and figure out what's going to pack the dance floor, what's going to clear the dance floor. Like just knowing that was my musical education.
So was this something that started in Minnesota?
DJ?
Yeah, DJing.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I was born and raised in Minnesota. So there was a DJ named Kyle Ray who was he was more of a personality DJ. He didn't really mix or anything, but he just could hype the crowd. He just was really good at it. And he unfortunately passed away early. I think he got murdered or something happened. Really tragic. And the club that he worked at, I worked at a club, I was working at a teen club called the Disco Trek, which I loved. I'd do about 1,000 kids on the weekends and stuff, and it was great.
How old were
Is
you?
this late 70s then? Or when?
This was late 70s, probably 78, 79, something like that. I was probably 18, 19 years old at that point. And I used to love doing that. And but then the other clubs, I said, hey, we need somebody to fill in. So I got a job at where Kyle Ray used to work. And it was great because I got to do different things on different nights. So literally, Monday night I worked at a club called Studio 94, which was kind of based on Studio 54. But the freeway it was on was 94, Highway 94, right? So they called it Studio 94.
Jesus.
And that was straight spinning. It was a gay club, straight spinning, no talking. Just that was it, and mostly not more kind of house-based music, but some R&B mixed in type of thing.
What were some of the big hits that you were dropping in that club at that time? Do you remember?
Wow. I'm trying to think. Wow, that's a great question.
So this was like late 70s.
Yeah, late
peak
70s.
Disco.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But you're playing funk still.
Yeah. Oh yeah, definitely playing funk still. Yeah, definitely. But it was all very smooth. It was all very mixed and very smooth. It wasn't, nothing was even chopped up. Funkin' for Jamaica was a big one.
Okay.
That was a big one. Voices Inside My Head was a big one.
Wow. That's kind of a deep cut even now. That's crazy. That was a big
Yeah.
record then. Would you have been picking that up from like the DJ who you were kind of following, hearing, or were you traveling at all at that point? Or
I was part of a record pool called the Wide Angle Record Pool. And so I would go every week, and then we would, have the kind of the DJ pool, and we would pick the records that, we thought were the ones that were going to work for our clubs and that kind of stuff. And so there was a couple of guys, Jerry Silvers and Walter McLean were their names, and they were very kind of influential on kind of my style and kind of picking the records that would work. Because actually Walter McLean was actually the main DJ at that particular club at Studio 94, and I just played Monday nights.
okay.
Because I think it was just a thing where he wasn't available Monday nights, and he just said, hey, you want to do Monday nights? And I said, yeah.
Right.
So it was great. But what was cool about it was because I was doing the gay club on Monday night, I was doing kind of the black R&B club on Tuesday night, I was doing the kind of upscale white club on Wednesday night, called the Oz.
Yeah.
And then on the weekends, on Friday and Saturday, Saturday and Sunday, I would do the teen club. And so I had a kind of a mix of audiences, and I got to spin different styles of music.
What was a busy schedule?
It's a big.
Oh, I loved it.
Open
I loved
format.
it.
Working in Minnesota.
No, I loved it.
Got a bunch of DJs listening to this show are going to be looking at Minnesota.
He created open format.
Well, everybody wanted me to be like in one, like just exclusive to this club. And I was like, no, because I like the idea of being able to play different types of music and different kinds of sets and stuff. And my teen club was great because my teen club was always the newest stuff. And there was a girl named Joyce who used to come in every week with a 12-inch or a couple of 12 inches, and she'd go, you got to play this. And I'd go, okay. And I remember probably the biggest record I had actually at the teen club was a song called Dance With Me Tonight by MFSB. And she walked in with the 12-inch, and I remember I put it on real quick just to cue it, and I didn't like it. I was like, ooh, I'm not sure about this. And she said, don't worry, my crew will come out and dance to it. Don't worry about it.
That's a good way to request a song. That's a good way to request.
So she said, yeah, right.
Bad Bunny back then.
But she gave me the record. I remember I put the record on, and the dance floor kind of slowly starts clearing.
Oh no!
And I was like, uh-oh. And then, but it starts off in this kind of thing, but then it drops into this groove. And when the groove dropped in, her group of folks, maybe 10, 12 folks, they all get on the floor. And then once they start grooving, then a couple more people get on the floor. By the end of the song, the floor is packed. And I was just like, okay. So I told, there was a local record retailer up there called it was called Hot Licks, right?
Okay.
And there was Music Land back in the day, and there was another store called Music City, and they were these big stores, right? But this is a little hole-in-the-wall store. And I said to them, I got this song called Dance With Me Tonight. You guys got to order like 500 of these. And they were like, 500? And I said, yeah, trust me. So anyway, the next week I remember going back, and I said, what happened? And they said, it's sold out. I said, well, how many did you order? And they said, 100. I said, I told you. This is my #1 record. So I got into the whole marketing of things. I did my playlist. I did my Jimmy Jam playlist every week of what the top records were. And then I could help them order so they had the right records. So I just was kind of immersed into the whole
You're breaking records.
Were you
man.
aware of the scenes in New York and in other cities as well? Were you?
Yeah.
Was there a communication there with DJs or clubs? And other places?
No, there actually wasn't. And that was the interesting thing about growing up in Minneapolis. We got some influence from both sides, definitely from New York, definitely from West Coast, Chicago for sure. But it didn't really have a bearing. Like there were records that were only big in our area. You know what I'm saying? Like in the rest of the country, they weren't necessarily working, but in our area, for some reason, they all really worked. So
Yeah, true regional record.
yeah, true. Yeah, regional. Exactly. Yeah.
So it's like you were kind of maybe like being in Minnesota, you were probably behind on a lot of things. But when your city picked it up and you were playing it,
Yeah.
what were you noticing that the crowd were reacting more to West or to East Coast sounds?
Well, I'll tell you. It's funny because we were talking about, before we started even the broadcast, we were talking about Ohio bands. And the Ohio bands always were really big. Ohio players were huge. Those records were always huge for me. Chocolate Milk, I think they're out of Ohio too. That was another
Cleveland
one, right?
area.
Slave.
Yeah.
Hot chocolate.
Slave was huge.
Zap. I mean,
Zap.
Roger.
Oh yeah, Roger and Zap, absolutely, yeah.
And then Cincinnati, you had King Records, D. Felice Trio, and Isley's, Ellie Reed.
Yeah.
Ohio's the funk capital. I've been singing its praises.
But it kind of makes sense because it's all kind of in the middle together.
Well, it's Midwest. It's definitely Midwest.
Definitely
Yeah.
Of course,
Those records were big.
Obviously gave you a unique perspective as someone who's also from the Midwest. When you don't grow up in kind of a big city, a coastal city, I imagine this is all part of developing your unique sound, that when
Absolutely.
you finally started going out west, you're bringing something that people haven't heard before because it's your own kind of melting pot that big cities aren't necessarily hearing locally. So that's kind of one of the benefits of being, from not a small town. Minneapolis isn't small, but kind of being from the middle, and along with kind of a longing to get out of your hometown a little bit, and it gives you a different kind of motivation for work.
Well, if you think about the most popular person in that town ever, it's Prince, right?
Right.
And Prince was definitely the whole idea of, taking horns out of music, because there was horns in music. It was all synthesizers with him, using drum machines, basically playing all the instruments. He did all that kind of stuff. And it made it so unique. And so when people came to town, once things started jumping off there in a big way, it was because there was something different. They realized that there's something different. But a lot of it was because, Minneapolis was probably about 3% black at that point. Yeah. So we had our, little collective of folks, but we were listening. There was a black radio station that was like sun up to sundown, and you couldn't really pick it up. It was AM radio at the top of the dial. Yeah. So you really couldn't pick it up. And after the sun went down at 5 o'clock or whatever, you couldn't hear any more radio. So I grew up listening to pop music and stuff. But I just think that yes, the environment and the geographic location definitely affected the way we made music, but also when we played in bands. I mean, because Terry and I, we've known each other 50 plus years now at this point. And when we played in bands, we would have to learn other people's songs, right? So it taught us about playing hit songs, but it wouldn't just be, R&B songs. Like we'd play a bar mitzvah one day, we'd play at the roller rink another day, we'd play at the Elks Lodge another day. So the variety of things that people would ask for, we had to really figure it out. And people would ask, did we know a country song? Did we know a rock song?
Is this flight time or
this is flight time? This is flight time. Yeah. We had to learn everybody else's stuff, but it gave you Terry calls it the seasoning. So then when we got on stage with the time, that was like easy compared to having to figure out a whole 3 or 4 hours of music for people.
You were tested.
Yeah, we were definitely tested. Yeah.
Now, were you DJ Jimmy Jam at that point when you were DJ?
Yes. And I got the name from, so the club I was working at was called the Fox Trap. And and there was a bartender there who actually from Philadelphia, and his name was Delphonic. And when he had listened to me spend a couple of nights, my first couple of nights there.
His name was Delphonic?
Yeah, well, that was his nickname.
Okay,
that was his nickname. Well,
that's the greatest name in history.
That would be
if that's
good,
the name
right?
you're born with.
I know, right?
Right.
Yeah, that would be awesome. Yeah, I don't remember his real name, but that Delphonic is what he went by, right? And so I remember after the first night I spun, which went really well, and I came down to get a drink, and he said, "Yo, man, what's your name?" And I said, "Jimmy Harris." He said, No. What's your DJ name? And I said, "Oh, I don't have a DJ name." He said, "Man, you got to have a DJ name because everybody's asking me who the DJ is, and I can't just go Jimmy Harris. You gotta." And so anyway, he said, "I'm going to call you Jimmy Jam."
Wow.
He said, "Jimmy Jam, pots and pans, shake my hand." He goes into this whole rap. And I was like, okay. So I became known as Jimmy Jam. That was my DJ name. So when the Time started, when Prince worked with us on the Time record, I remember when we were doing the credits for the record, and I said to Prince, I said, "Hey, Prince," I said, "should I be Jimmy Harris or Jimmy Jam?" And he goes, "Jimmy Jam."
Done deal. That's your new legal name just at that moment.
Yeah, that's right. Solidified by Prince.
Story
that's right.
is so crazy.
And was First Avenue a club at this time?
First Avenue was definitely a club. And actually it was one of the first white clubs to let black bands play. And we were Flight Time was one of the first bands to go in. And they had this little sub club, I guess you'd call it, a little around the corner called 7th Street Entry. And it wasn't the big room, but it was this little room. And they'd have all the, punk rock bands and all the different people would play. And they'd allowed us to play in there. So it was one of the first places that allowed us to actually play.
They showed that in Purple Rain.
Yeah.
For those who don't know, First Avenue, legendary Minneapolis nightclub.
Yep.
So at what point did we lose DJ Jimmy Jam and you went full time into being this producer, musician, and songwriter?
So the story is that at this Foxtrap club, I was playing. It was 3 floors of the club. The 3rd floor was kind of a lounge, chill type thing. The 2nd floor was where I spun records, which was just a full out party. The 1st floor was a live music lounge type of thing. So as it happened, Terry's band, which was Flight Time, but I wasn't playing with them at that point because I had basically quit, being in a band to DJ. So I remember Terry would come. He'd ask me all the time, "Man, I need another keyboard player. I need another keyboard player." I said, "Nah, man, I'm not doing that anymore, man. I'm DJing." So anyway, one night he comes and he says, "I found a keyboard player," and I said, "Oh, great." He said, "Come down in here," and I said, "Okay." So it was early in the night. And there wasn't really anybody there. So I put on Knee Deep, which I think was like 17 minutes or something.
Yes.
The lifesaver.
Yep. Oh my God. So I put on Knee Deep. I go downstairs. I walk in, and they're playing What You Won't Do for Love, right? And I'm like going, where's the singer at? He sounds really good. And buried behind this group of keyboards is this little white dude, Monty Moyer.
Wow.
And Monty's singing his ass off. And I'm like going, oh man, he's incredible. Okay, great. So anyway, I go back upstairs. End of the night, they're breaking everything down. I come down, I go, "Terry, man, you got your dude, man. He sounds great. He says, yeah. He said, yeah. He said, "Now we just need you." And I said, what do you need me for? He said, "We got to have 2 keyboard players, man. That's going to be the thing." And he literally would call me every single day. Like this is before cell phones now. He would call me on my landline at my house. I'm still living at home with my mom at this point, and he'd call me every single day. What you gonna do, Jam? What you gonna do? Like, and I was like, man, I don't even have any keyboards anymore. I'll get you keyboards, man. What do you want? Like, it was like, I mean, that's Terry to this day, by the way. I mean, he was just the one. He was the visionary.
Thank God
he
for
was the
him,
visionary.
huh?
Yeah, thank God for Terry Lewis. Yeah.
So what was the deciding factor? What made you just abandon DJing and join up with Terry?
Okay, so what happened was I had broken up with this girl, or no, this girl had broken up with me, I should say.
Oh no, her loss.
And
Don't tell me it was because of a girl.
yeah. So I was walking home from her house. I didn't have a car. That might have had something to do with it. But I was walking home. I wasn't rolling really, but I mean,
Wait, how did you bring all your records to the club?
Oh, I kept them. The club, because I belonged to the record pool, I would always have records at each of my clubs.
Oh, okay.
I was already set.
Wow.
I was already set. I'd get multiples of everything. I'd be good. So anyway, so I'm walking home from this girl's house, and she was actually an older woman, I should say, because I think I was probably 20 and she was probably 30.
Wow. Okay.
And so,
all right.
Yeah. But anyway, I'm walking home from her house. I walk by, I hear some music coming out of like this club, and I walked in, and it was Terry and the band, and they were all playing. And I said, "Oh, what's up, Terry?" He says, "What's up?" And I said, "What are you doing?" And he says, "Well, this club lets us practice here, and then we play on the weekends, but they allow us to practice here." And I said, "Oh, that's cool." He said, "Man, you got to come join the band, man." I said, "Nah, I just broke up with this girl, man." I said, whatever." He said, "Get your mind off it. Get your mind off it." So the same thing. Anyway, I joined the band. When I joined the band, we ended up opening, one of our last gigs as Flight Time was opening for Cameo. When Cameo was like the biggest R&B act out. We ended up opening up for them. And what I remember was Cameo said, it wasn't even them, it was one of their roadies, I guess. They were taking the stage down. And they looked at us and they said, "You guys will never be nothing."
Wow. Jesus.
And I was like, why? Why would somebody even say that? But we were like, okay, cool. So as things would go, of course, the time happened. So once the time happened, it was kind of like that was going to be my full-time job. So the DJ thing wasn't going to happen anymore, right? Mm-hmm. So I remember we played our first gig. I think we only had just our single, Get It Up, was the only thing we had, our very first time single. And we played in Detroit. I want to say it was maybe the Masonic Temple might have been the place we played. And the lineup was Cameo, Shalimar, and The Time. So we were the openers, right?
Wow.
But because of a DJ in Detroit, and Prince was huge in Detroit, and there was a DJ in Detroit, the Electrifying Mojo.
Yeah, they had a show.
Yeah. Okay, so Electrifying Mojo
it was like
put
a
us
little
on
Soul
the air.
Train type of thing, but they played music of the time. Yeah.
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 And he was
in
on
Detroit.
And he was on the but he was on the radio, and we went to the radio station to do like an interview. And he played Get It Up like 12 times in a row. He just kept playing it, and he kept, "Who do you think this is? Who do you think this is?" And then he had a window, right? And he said, after about 12 times playing the record, he said, "Watch this." And he opens the window, and there's like 1,000 people out in front of the studio, all trying to see who we are.
Oh, wow.
And it was the most crazy thing ever. So the next night, we're doing the gig. And I remember the way we set it up, our first song was we did a song called The Stick. And The Stick started off with nothing but drums, right? But that was our sound check. Because we never would get, as the opening act, you don't get a sound check, right? So that allowed our guy to dial in the drums, right? So basically the song would start and it would just be boom, ka, boom, boom, ka, boom, ka, boom, boom. And it would just, that's all it would do, right? And he'd dial in the drums. But while he's doing that, Morris would stand with his back to the audience. They would put one single spotlight on him, and he would just be combing his hair. And I'm telling you, it was like the Beatles had showed up.
Wow.
When that spotlight hit Morris, it was like, we were like, oh my God, right? And we turned around, we launched into our show. We did like a 20-minute show, right? And nobody knew any of the songs. And of course, they knew Get It Up, right? But we killed it. I mean, we wrecked Detroit, right? So I remember, Shalimar went on. They were okay. They were missing a couple members or whatever at that point in time. They were going through their transition. When Cameo, I don't know, they had a really bad show. They had a really bad show. And as we were walking out, we saw that same dude.
Wow.
And he just looked at us, and we looked at him, and he just kind of nodded like that, and we nodded back at him. And it's like, dude,
Wow.
don't ever do that. But I mean, and we never were like, it wasn't like a competition thing. Like we weren't thinking of, like we loved Cameo. Matter of fact, Cameo, we talk about records that I played.
Right.
The Cameo records. Matter of fact, one of my best mixes, I had 3 turntables at my teen club, and I used to play Shake Your Pants by Cameo.
Yeah.
And I had them lined up where I could go, shake, 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 goon, shake, 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 goon, shake, 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 where I could do that. I could line them all up like that.
Wow.
And I used to love that, but I used to get to the part where it would be, I can't remember whether Shake Your Pants or I Just Want to Be, which was the song before that. But there was this part that went, like that, right? But I'd take it and reverse it. And it was the weirdest thing, but those kinds of mixes, those kinds of like little musical mixes, those are the things I always love to do.
Wow.
And so Cameo was like our band, like we loved them. And
Origin story.
yeah, man.
Origin story.
Yeah. So, but you never know. But we always made it. It was a learning experience because there was Rufus Thomas. There was a guy named Rufus Thomas. He had a hot pants. Like he was like Stax Records back in the day. Funky Penguin, right? All that crazy stuff, right? And I remember he got our card one time. We were at a show. And Terry gave him his card, and he like threw the card on the floor and stomped on it.
What?
And we were like, wow. But fast forward, I'm telling you, God works in mysterious ways. So fast forward probably, I don't know, 20 years later, and I was at the Recording Academy at this point. I probably was like the chairman of the Recording Academy by this point. And they asked me to come to Memphis to present Rufus Thomas with a Lifetime Achievement Award.
Wow.
And I mentioned to his son and daughter, I mentioned that story to him. And I said, I don't have any sort of, I mean, I'm going to pay homage to the man, so I don't have anything, but I just want you to know that that's how we met.
Right.
So it's ironic that I'm here doing this now. But there's so many kind of stories in my life that have been like that, kind of full circle moments. But I just love the fact that I get to, interact with people like that, and having the club experience, having the DJ experience, having the playing experience and all those things. So much informed my life, where my life is. Yeah.
So I'm curious because you went to junior high school with Prince, right?
Yes. Yeah.
And
What a flex. What a flex.
and your father, talented musician, right?
Yep.
Cornbread Harris.
Yep.
You recently released a book.
Yep.
And where did the DJing, obviously with your father and going to school with Prince
Yes.
at such an early age,
Yep.
it was obviously you were surrounded by so much music.
Yes.
And you were talking about how, I think, Goldie, you mentioned how your grandmother was a big part of the musical talent that kind of like prominent in your
Yeah.
family on your dad's side, right?
Well, I grew up in a musical household.
Yeah.
And my dad played. So I would go to his gigs like when I was little, when I was 6 years old, 7 years old. I would always go to his gigs when he would play, right? Mm-hmm. But my mom was the one that played, like she owned the record player. So all the records that I would hear growing up, particularly like Ray Charles was like a big one for her that she loved. And so I would hear music all day long. And that was really the thing. And my mom was also very much into making sure that I was exposed to the arts. So we would go to, the Guthrie Theater, which is a big, theater there. We'd go to the Children's Theater. We'd go to the Minnesota Orchestra. We'd go to the Walker Art Museum. Mm-hmm. I mean, so I was really immersed in just kind of the culture of creativity, I guess I would say.
Right.
And always had an appreciation for it. And my dad was my first professional gig because he could never keep a drummer in his band. And I played drums at the time. And he never could keep a drummer. And one day the guitar player just said, why don't you let your son drum? He knows all the songs. And so I ended up gigging with him, and everybody seemed to love it. And the next week, it became like my real gig, Wow. And my mom was my agent, and she said, "How much are you going to pay him?" And he said, "I'll kick him out $20 or something." And she said, "No, you're going to pay him just like a real drummer." So then that started my bank account, and I was 12. Yeah, I was 12 years old at that point.
Oh my God!
And that same summer, I met Terry Lewis. Summer of '73 is when I met Terry. And Terry was putting a band together. He said, we're going to put this band together. And I said, okay, cool. I said, I'll play drums. And he said, I got a drummer. I said, oh. And he said, you play keyboards. And I said, why? He said, because your dad plays keyboards. You should be able to play. And I said, okay. So Terry was the one that turned me into a keyboard player.
Started at age 12. He started bothering
How old
you.
was Terry?
Terry was probably a couple of years older than me. Wow. I think he was probably 15. But he was like, first time I saw Terry, man, I always tell this story. We walked in, we were staying indoors. So it was a program called Upward Bound. It was at the University of Minnesota. and we were staying at dorms. It was like a 6-week summer school program. We're staying in dorms at the University of Minnesota, and we're moving in. And as we're moving in, I see this dude sitting on his bed with a red, black, and green bass playing Kool and the Gang bass parts. And I was like, who's this dude? I got to get to know him, right? It was like love at first sight. Terry saw me down in there was a room where they stored all the pianos because it was out of, school, basically. And there was a lunchroom downstairs. They stored all the pianos, and I found my way to the piano, and I would play. And then he always says that there was a bunch of girls around. I don't remember that part necessarily, but I was always playing piano. I was always down there just playing piano and stuff. Like Chicago had a song called Color My World. There was this kind of cool piano song. And I'd play that song, and he saw me play, and he said, I got to get to know him. Wow. And that was how we got together. We put together, at the end of that kind of semester or whatever, we put a little band together, and that was our first gig ever together. Wow. And like I say, that's 50 plus years ago at this point.
Did you meet Terry before Prince? Or you met Prince?
I met Prince before Terry. I think, very kind of around the same time. Prince we were in a piano class together. In junior high. So I think I was in 7th grade, probably. It was before it was called middle school. It was junior high back in the day. And I think I was probably 7th grade, I want to say. And Prince was, we took this piano class, but it was really weird because we both knew how to play the piano. Mm-hmm. But the teacher would give us like Mary Had a Little Lamb or something like that. And they'd say, she'd go, learn this song. And we'd go, okay. And then she'd leave, and then we just start jamming. They had these little keyboards and stuff, and you could put the headphones on and just jam. And I was always impressed by Prince. I thought he could play. I thought he was so musically gifted, and I thought I was pretty good too because my dad played. I didn't realize that his dad was a player too, like a jazz player. Mm-hmm. I never knew why he was so good, but that was why. And so at the end of that kind of school year, they said, hey, we're going to do a musical. Who wants to be in the band for the musical? And so they said, and everybody raised their hand, and they said, Prince, what do you want to play? And he said, guitar. It's like, guitar?
You just saw him playing
I just saw him playing the keyboards. I'm like, guitar, really? And then they looked at me and they said, Jimmy, what do you want to play? And I said, drums. And Prince looked at me like, drums? I thought you were a keyboard player, right? So anyway, we get into rehearsal. Prince walks in the first day with his guitar. He plugs it in and he plays. There's a song called Make Me Smile by Chicago. And Terry Kath is a guitar player in Chicago back in the day. He's an amazing guitar player. Prince plugs this thing in and plays note for note the solo in Make Me Smile. Oof. And we're all like going, oh my God.
At 11 years old?
He was probably 13, probably 12. I think he might have been a year older than me. He was like a year older than me, I think. Yeah. Matter of fact, exactly a year older than me because our birthdays were a year apart. I'm June 6th and he was June 7th.
Wow.
Oh. So yes, he was exactly like a year older than me.
Gemini gang over here. I'm down.
Good. Yeah. Yeah, man. So, that was the thing. So, but then I remember we took a break. I went to the bathroom and while I'm in the bathroom, I hear somebody stirring up the drums and I'm thinking, oh man, must be the drum teacher. And I walk out and it's Prince on the drums.
Oh man.
Killing it. So, I was aware of that talent from junior high days, man.
At one point when Prince became bigger than life, where you're like, that kid from junior high school, I knew he had it in him. Like, what was the turning point for you?
Well, we were all in competing bands. He had a band called Grand Central, and in that band was Andre Simone, who's my cousin.
Wow.
And Morris Day was his drummer.
Jesus.
In that band.
Morris Day was the drummer.
He was the drummer. Morris Day was the drummer. And not just the drummer. Morris was the most amazing drummer. He still is. He still can play. He's amazing. There's stuff online. You can find some stuff online of him playing. He's amazing. And he played. Matter of fact, Morris, just to talk about his drumming, if you listen to a lot of Prince records like Let's Work, mm-hmm. That's Morris on the drums. Wow. On that song. Oh, yeah. So a lot of those songs that Prince did where there's like live drums, where it's not drum machine, it's live drums, that's Morris.
It is crazy to think about how much important music in our lives came out of a junior high, single junior high class, and then one, your friend also, just this local thing that. Yeah, it's just mind-boggling to think about what that.
So much talent in just one spot.
It's just such a big part of our DJ career is all these songs that just think about they just starting in like basically a classroom as kids. It's like,
Yeah, definitely.
or a friend who kept bugging you to play in his band, and like
That's right.
it's
Yeah,
unreal.
man.
You hear about Memphis and kind of how these neighborhoods are just like
Yes.
melting pot places where just talent is just
Yep.
churning out of basically. But to take it back to a middle school in Minneapolis is
That's nuts.
Well,
really something else.
in Purple Rain, how there's kind of the storyline of the competing bands, like there's right.
Yeah.
That was what it was like in Minneapolis. That truly was what it was. Like we had our band, Prince had his band. Eventually, when Prince kind of made it out, then Morris had his own band called the Enterprise Band of Pleasure.
Oh, Jesus.
Which is a very Morris Day type name, right? And the funny thing about that band is Morris would play the drums in that band, but then one song he'd come out and sing, and ironically, since Morris is cool, the one song he would come out and sing was Too Hot by Kool and the Gang.
Wow.
17, we fell in love, right? He would start singing and we were laughing. We were like, damn, this dude can actually sing. Okay, cool. So it was just this community, man, up there that was just, it was great. I mean, we didn't realize it because we were living it.
Right.
So, I mean, looking back on it, it's pretty astonishing, I guess. But yeah, it was just our vibes, man. And seeing Prince make it, though, made it where we wanted to make it out, you know,
Right.
because we couldn't play in any of the clubs. I mean, we couldn't. Well, so what we did, I will say, we became entrepreneurs. And what happened was all the white clubs wouldn't let us play. They all had white bands playing R&B music, right? But they wouldn't let us play. So there was a hotel that was getting ready to be demolished. I think it was basically they were going to tear it down, but they had this big ballroom that was just sitting empty. And so we asked, hey, can we use the ballroom down at the hotel? And they said, yeah, well, what do you want to do? And we said, well, we want to throw like an event, but we figure we'll take the door. We're going to charge $3 at the door or whatever, and we'll take that. But you guys have all the liquor, so you guys get all the liquor sales and whatever. So anyway, we threw this thing. And back in the day, this is before social media. So social media was, we printed up a bunch of flyers. We put them on the cars at all the clubs that, people were at. And said, come down to this thing. Yeah, exactly. And anyway, the first gig we did, I think we had somewhere around 1,000 people, 1,500 people, something like that, packed into this ballroom. And meanwhile, all the other clubs were sitting empty. And so people were like, well, wait, where's everybody at? And they said, oh, they all went to see the band you wouldn't hire, at your club, which then made everybody want to hire us,
Right.
But then at that point, we were like, no, we're good.
Yeah,
we're good.
making the door.
We're good. And then we would always invest whatever we made back into better sound equipment, better. We would always invest it back into ourselves to try to get better. And that was kind of set the template of, what we ended up doing.
When you and Prince were in school and you guys had that, that musical that you guys did.
Yep.
Were you guys friends, or was there kind of an intimidated competition or
I don't think there was no competition on my part. I'm just naturally not a competitive person. I just want to see everybody do well. I mean, that's just kind of the way I am. But I think, no, we weren't friends.
Why is that though?
Well, Prince really didn't have a lot of friends. Prince had an older brother, Dwayne, who was basically, I think maybe a year older than him, who he hung out with. And Andre Simone, who I mentioned, and Prince actually lived at Andre Simone's house for quite a while. But those were kind of his friends. But Prince was very much a loner. He wasn't really a friend, I don't think, in that sense to a lot of people.
Right.
So yeah, I mean, he had people he was comfortable around. And he was comfortable around me in a musical environment, in a piano class or something like that. I think he was perfectly fine. But I don't know whether he felt or we felt we had interests the same,
right.
After that,
You kind of need someone like Terry to kind of bring everyone together.
Yeah.
To kind of call you and say like, join my band and keep doing that. So I was just like wondering like how everyone gravitated to each other.
Prince loved Terry because Terry would tell it like it is. Terry has no filter. And, they'd get into these long conversations about stuff. And Prince, he'd just say to Prince, man, Prince, you're nuts. You're crazy. That ain't going to work. And by the way, Morris was like that for Prince also. They both told him like it was. And I think he needed to hear that from people because he was so talented and eventually so powerful that people were scared to actually
tell them no.
Right.
Yes, yeah. And
So-
I think you got to have people to keep it real with you. And I think Terry Lewis was definitely that, because Terry would challenge things that Prince would say. Because Prince would say something, and Terry would go, "Nah, I don't believe that." You know, something, and they'd get into these, like I say, really deep conversations. But even in the time, Morris would always defer to Terry. Like if somebody asked something, hey, do you guys want to do this, or you want to do this radio station, or you want to do whatever? And Morris would always go, Terry, what do you think?
So
That
was
was
he
always the
older?
thing.
Was he older than your guys?
Yeah.
No, Morris and Terry are like the same age.
But did you feel like he was older?
Terry, yeah, because Terry had his own house, like when he was like, I don't know, 17 or something. Like he worked, like he drove a bus.
Right.
Terry was very super responsible. And that was why, and Terry, I'm telling you, when we did our last gig, I think we might have been in Houston or somewhere of the Time tour, and Terry said, hey, I'm going to LA. Who wants to come? And everybody at this point, this is going to really date it, everybody was saving their money to buy a VCR.
So this had to be like 81.
The VCR
80.
was 82, like 82. Like
Yeah.
everybody was going to buy a VCR because we had one on our bus, on our tour bus, and everybody loved the VCR, right? So, so everybody said, "No, man, you're crazy, you're crazy." And I said, "I'll go." And Terry said, "Come on, let's go." And I said, "Well, why are we going, man?" And he said, "Because they need us out there." I was like,
We all
"They
need
us
we
out
all need
there."
a friend like Terry in our
right?
lives, man.
Yeah,
Where was Terry when we were all
Yeah,
17?
right. I swear to God, I was like, Terry, man. I said, where are we gonna stay, man? Oh, we'll figure it out.
Yeah.
So, well, where are we gonna get, where are we gonna get our equipment to do like demos and stuff? Because we didn't really have anything. I had like a little keyboard. He had his bass, and he said, "Oh, we'll figure it out. We'll figure it out." And "we'll figure it out" became literally what we did. I mean, we ate. I mean, we didn't have any money, man. We used to eat at this place called Golden Bird Chicken. They had a $2.99 special. That was our lunch every day.
Oh man.
And we found a house. We found some people from Minneapolis that had a house out there. They let us stay in a little room that was probably about as big as this little area right here. We had 2 cots in there, and that's where we slept. And then when they'd go to work or whatever, then we go and record our little demos and stuff. We found in the classifieds, we found a little 4-track, tape recorder and stuff. And everybody was like, "Man, they out there starving, man. They out there starving." And we weren't starving, but we weren't doing well, but we were okay. We still had our old suits and stuff from like the time. And we'd be walking around in 90-degree weather.
Crazy.
And we'd walk to Golden Bird because we didn't have a car. So we'd walk to Golden Bird Chicken, and the police would stop us walking. And they'd go,
Y'all ain't from here.
"Yeah, you guys aren't from here, are you?" And we said, "No."
Superhuman.
But let me, okay, but I'm sorry to be so long-winded here, but let me tell you a story about that. So one of the times the cops stopped us on our way to Golden Bird, they said, "Man, you guys got to get some clothes, man. It's too hot out here." And we said, "Yeah, well, we don't know where to shop." And he says, "Well, I got a friend that's got a store called Antenna. It's on Hollywood Boulevard, and you guys should go down there. I'll tell him you guys are coming, and he'll take care of you." I said, "Okay, cool." So anyway, we go down to the store Antenna, and the dude gives up, he gives us some stuff, some shorts, and gives us some, LA wear type shit. So it's like, okay, cool. So anyway, now fast forward, let's see, how many years would have that been? That was like 82. So fast forward like 10 years later, probably. We're getting a star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame. And I remember seeing the address of the place, and I was like, that address seems familiar for some reason, right? So we pull up to where we're going to get our star, and it's right in front of Antenna.
Wow.
And the guy comes out and he goes, "Hey, it's you guys." And we said, "Hey, it's you." He said, "What are you doing?" I said, "We're getting a star." And so our star is literally in front of where Antenna was, right? And that store is no longer there, but what's there now, do you guys know DJ Ski?
Yeah.
Yes.
DJ Ski's headquarters are there now. And he said that the reason he got that building was he saw our star in front of it, but right next to our star was Errol Garner, who just got a Lifetime Achievement Award at the Grammys, who was his dad's favorite artist.
Wow.
And he said when he saw Errol Garner's star, he saw Jimmy Jam, Terry Lewis star, he said,
This must be the place.
"This must be the place." And this is where he still operates his stuff out of there. Man.
Jesus.
So, I mean, I'm telling you, man,
Wow.
scripts you can't write.
I actually initially asked about your relationship with Terry and Prince because in interviews you speak about, when Prince fired you, when he told you guys, you guys are fired.
Yes.
You left the room.
Yep.
And you were like, okay. And you left.
Yes.
And Terry stayed and kind of argued with him.
Yes.
Why did Terry stay, and why were you so comfortable with the accepting the fact that y'all were fired, but Terry wasn't? You know?
Yeah, because it's just the difference of our personality. It's kind of the yin and the yang, I guess.
I was wondering if your relationship with Prince was maybe a little bit like you knew him a little bit more. So when he said you were fired, you were like, yeah, I guess we're done. Whereas Terry was like, no, like we're not done.
Well, I think in that moment, I think that I felt like there was really nothing I could say, because even though we had done a couple of tours together with the time and we were together a lot, I never felt like necessarily that Prince was going to listen to anything that I had to say. It wasn't that, he was doing anything wrong or that we had any sort of animosity or any sort of thing like that. I just think that he didn't necessarily, he listened to Terry. I felt like he listened to Terry. I don't feel like he really listened to me. And I didn't have a problem with that, but I just kind of thought, I like to conserve my energy. Especially now that I'm old, but even in my young days, I don't like arguing with people. I'm just like, I'm not going to argue. So I just got up and walked out because to me, there was nothing else to say. And Terry tried to, I won't even say argue with him. It was more like trying to reason with him. Terry was trying to point out, how is us trying to improve ourselves hurting you, hurting what you're doing? Like we're trying to get better at what we do so that we can make a bigger contribution. We're not saying you got to put us on more on the records.
Right.
We're saying, let us go out and do our thing. And we're not giving away the time sound, which is what Prince's, one of his thing was, don't give away the sound. Right. But why would we want to do that? Our whole philosophy was don't give away this time sound, do something totally different than what the time was doing.
For our listeners who don't know, Prince initially fired you because you were doing music for SOS Band and he didn't like the fact that you were producing for someone else.
Yeah, he told us not to.
Yeah.
So we were going against what he said to do.
When you heard that you were fired, I've just been so curious about this. Were you hurt? Were you angry, or were you just kind of? Did you feel a sense of relief? Because I think that calmness to just say okay and then walk out. I was wondering what you were thinking at that time, because Terry's reaction makes sense to me.
Yes.
Where you want to sit there and reason with Prince.
Yep.
It's not what you think.
Yeah.
Where you were just kind of okay with just walking away from it. You know?
But I think that really speaks a lot to overall kind of the way Terry and I are. We each have different things that, bug us or that, we feel passionate about and that we'll, put the energy into trying to change or whatever. But I'm always been a big believer in it just kind of happens the way it's supposed to happen. And we always thought we were going to get fired. That was the thing to me. we knew once he found out that we were doing SOS Band, because when we missed the gig, because we missed a gig in San Antonio, which was the whole thing because we got caught in a snowstorm in Atlanta.
That blizzard,
that whole crazy, But yeah, it was that was the thing was I always thought like I just didn't want to argue about stuff. I always thought we're going to get fired anyway once he finds out that we were doing SOS Band. And once he did, he fired us. So that was the thing. But I also, in my mind, I knew that we had a recording session that was already set up to mix the SOS Band record. So when we walked out, when Terry finally came out, after 5 minutes later, not that long later, but maybe 5 minutes later, he came out. And we just kind of looked at each other and said, well, what do you want to do? And he said, well, I guess we'll go over to Larrabee and mix this SOS Band record. So we knew we had something to do. Like there was a light that, we were shown. Like there, you can go and move to this next thing. We were devastated about it because, we loved the guys. And I think the person that took it the hardest was Morris.
Right.
Morris just literally like disappeared. And he was never, because he always hated the fact like when bands would break up and people would change members and stuff, that always really bothered him. So the fact that his band was changing and he didn't have control over that, I think really, really bothered him, which made it so fun to go back and, get with Morris and do Fishnet and do, the records that we were able to do together and that. Because Morris is, and I'll tell you, Morris is such a good dude. He told us back when Terry and he knew we were producing on the side, Morris did, and he was perfectly fine with it. And he told everybody in the band, he said, hey, Jimmy and Terry are doing their little thing on the side. That's cool. He said, I'm going to take some acting lessons because I want to try to do that. But everybody needs to figure out what it is they want to do because this band isn't going to last forever.
Right.
He told everybody that. And we listened. We were like, okay, cool. And we helped everybody out. When we got our thing, we helped Jesse out. You know, he did some records with us. Jelly Bean Johnson did some records with us. Monty Moyer did some records with us. So basically, we tried to help everybody out where we could. And Morris eventually, too. So that's the thing.
Do you ever wonder what would happen if you never worked with SOS Band and you know, denied that opportunity and that offer and you just stayed with Prince at the time? Do you ever think of, in your mind, do you ever envision where that would have ended up?
It's a great question. It's a great question. No, I really don't think about that. What I think about is if Prince would have allowed us to do what we were doing, and we could have brought everything under whatever Paisley Park or whatever his umbrella was. Because back then it was kind of like, you know, Motown was kind of the best example of a lot of really talented writers and producers all being under one place with acts. And I always thought, wow, if we stick together, if we get good at what we do, Prince is good at what he does, and you start bringing, you know, whether it's the Sheila E's or whether it's the Family or these other kind of Prince groups that are coming in, imagine doing all of that under one banner in Minneapolis.
Right.
That was kind of the thing. So that's the thing I think about more about probably than what if, you know, SOS hadn't happened. But that's the SOS lesson for me is the lesson that I always use whenever there's some adversity happening in my life in some way. Because the snowstorm in Atlanta was like the worst day of our life when we couldn't get a flight. We knew we were going to miss the gig. We knew we were letting the guys down, and that was the worst. But it fueled or planted the seeds for what eventually happened, which is our career, right? So because of that, whenever something kind of weird is happening and I can't figure out why it's happening, I just trust that there's a reason that it'll show itself maybe later on. Might be a year from now, might be 10 years from now, whatever. But looking back on it, there's so many moments in my life that are kind of like that.
Right.
So that's the way I look at it. And it allows me to get through, you know, those periods of, I don't know why is this happening? I don't know why this is happening. Because I know there's a reason, you know. And I just say, you know, whether you call it God's plan or whatever, you know, metaphor you want to use, I just feel I'm a big believer in that. And the older I get, the more I believe it because I can look back and actually see the things the way they happen.
You have to think about it. It's like, and that was part of my question, what do you attribute to? The fact that you meet your damn near soulmate at 13, 14 years old.
Right. Yes.
And then you have all these forks in the roads where it could go left because you could stay with Prince and being a member of his situation would be, you know, legendary.
Yeah.
But then you do your own thing and it becomes something totally different.
Yeah.
Like, you got to be, like, do you play lotto? You got to be the luckiest person in the world, man.
I actually do, and I've never won. My wife always sends me to the store and says, get the lotto tickets. I never win. I will tell you one thing about Terry, though, is that Prince, so Jelly Bean Johnson, who's a drummer in the time, he's probably the one person that Terry's known longer than me. Like him and Jelly Bean were already, when I met Terry, him and Jelly Bean were already great friends. But I remember Jelly Bean calling Terry, and I was there, you know, I was in the room, and he calls him, and he says to Terry, this is 83. He calls Terry, and he goes, hey, Prince wants you back. And Terry goes, what do you mean? He says, he wants you back. We're going to make this movie, man. And he wants you back, and, you know, blah, 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 blah. And he's explaining everything to him. And so I'm like listening. I'm like, okay, cool. And then he goes, and then Terry goes, what about Jam? And he goes, oh, he doesn't want him back.
Wow.
Terry said, I swear to God, if the phone could have disintegrated in his hand.
Right.
He said, you tell that little mother.
Wow.
And I'm going, no, Terry. I said, I'll wait, man. Go ahead and do your thing, man. He said, no, fuck that little. I mean, it was done.
Wow.
And so that was, once again, that was a moment that really solidified us because it was kind of divide and conquer.
Wow.
And Terry was not going for it. He was like, no.
Nah, that's amazing.
Yeah.
He chose you.
Yeah.
Oh, man.
That, right, mind blown.
You just have to trust it. I tell my kids that now. because things happen, and I always try to illustrate why things happen, because they're always like, wow, that was great, and I'm just like, yeah, great, but here's how it happened. Here's the kind of the chronology of how it happened. And so I've tried to make them more aware of that, that stuff just doesn't happen. Like there's literally there's a seed planted, and there's this other thing. I'll make a quick example from the Grammys this year.
Right.
So Chris Martin from Coldplay texted me, and he asked me, did I know a young, female guitar player for a song that he wanted to do on the Grammys? And I said, as a matter of fact, I do. I said, there's a girl out of Nashville named Grace Bowers, who I think is really good. And I said, let me know if you're interested in whatever. And so I didn't hear back from him right away. This was literally Tuesday of this past Grammy week. And so he said, so I texted Grace and I just said, hey, I just recommended you to an artist that's going to be on the show. And then she said, what show? And I said, the Grammys. And she said, oh my God. I said, so I don't know whether it's going to work out or not, but I said, let's see what happens. So the next day, Chris said, yeah, I think I'd like to try her. And I said, okay, cool. I'll connect. Do you want me to connect, your management to her management type of thing? And he said, no. Just I'll FaceTime or, whatever, just connect us. So I did. Yeah. So then I told her, I said, here's the song. I sent her the song and I said, just learn this song. Right. So she knew it was at that time, who it was. Anyway, they talk, and like literally the next day, that was on Tuesday, I think Wednesday night, I got a text from both of them where Chris said, she's in, thank you. Oh, and she said, I'm in, thank you, type of thing. And so in the in memoriam segment on the Grammys, if you happen to watch it back and you see this young guitar player killing it, I was the one that connected that. And so that's the kind of thing that I love to try to do, is try to connect really good people together. And I just appreciate when I wake up every day, I always thank God for the chance. I go, thank you, God, for another chance. I get another chance to try to do something meaningful. And that's it. Doesn't mean it's always going to happen, but at least that's the intention of the day when it starts.
So I heard a rumor, and maybe we can clear this rumor up.
Okay.
On this podcast, but I been talking to a couple of DJs. One of my friends, Eddie McDonald, in Las Vegas. Shout out to Mac Agency.
Yep.
And Eddie's been working with Anderson .Paak.
Yes.
DJ Pee Wee.
Yes.
And we're talking, and he's like, I was like, yeah, I might have Jimmy Jam on the podcast. He's like, oh, you don't say. Like we've been talking, and I think he wants to DJ again. Is that rumor true?
That rumor is very true.
Wow.
That rumor is very true.
The DJ Jimmy back to the roots. Pots and pans, Jimmy.
We don't know if we should congratulate you or warn you.
Probably a little of both. Probably a little of both.
By the way, if you're a real DJ and you see Jimmy Jam, you got to say Pots and Pans, Jimmy Jam.
That's right. That's right.
That's the
Pots
OG.
and pans.
That's the OG thing.
That's right.
Wait, so I got a lot of questions.
Okay.
But why do you want to come back into DJing? And has there been pockets throughout the past few decades with all these number one hits, with all these artists, with you supplying all the music for the DJs?
Yes.
Were there ever points where you're like, man, I wish I could play this in a club,
Yes.
Yeah.
All the time.
Wow. All the time.
Well, I first of all, I always love going to the clubs. I went to a thing last night. I think DJ Trauma was a DJ.
Trauma, what up?
Dave Chappelle's DJ.
Yeah. And it was great just listening to kind of the mashup stuff that he was doing was so amazing. And I love it. But see, first of all, I think it's so creative. Matter of fact, I sat with, at the Grammys this year, I sat with David Guetta, as a matter of fact.
Really?
Nice.
Yeah. So we had a great, it was funny because at first when we sat down, I don't think he knew who I was. And then all these people started coming up to me. And then I was talking to his daughter was there, and I was talking to his daughter, and it was her first Grammys and all of that. And then somebody came up to him and said, oh yeah, well, it's cool you're sitting with Jimmy Jam or whatever. And he went, oh wait, oh my God, I didn't know. And he gave me like the biggest hug. It was so nice and stuff. We had a great time. But I just think that it was so informative of me, as we've talked about, just to do that. And I just feel I just kind of returned to my roots type of thing, I think, a little bit. And also, I feel like one of the things I did when I DJ'd also was I DJ'd, but I also had a keyboard. And so a lot of times I would play along with the songs. I would kind of create my own little, recordings and stuff as I was doing it. And so I think there's a chance to do that, but also there's a chance to kind of tell some stories, and particularly the sampling part of what we do, because so much of it is, whether it's Rhythm Nation, which is obviously Sly and the Family Stone, or,
That's the Way Love Goes.
That's the Way Love Goes, which is Papa Don't Take No Mess and Impeach the President. I think
All
it's
for you.
All for you, Glow of Love.
Yeah.
So I think that there's a chance in my DJing to kind of sonically tell some of these stories of kind of the things that influenced me. And I always told people, if you ever wanted to know what music I loved growing up, just listen to the samples we use. Those are the foundation of all my musical, inspiration, I guess I'd say. So I look forward to that.
I have a conversation with DJs, and DJs produce, and I have a conversation with producers who were DJs.
Yep.
And there's two different mentalities. And usually when, a DJ's like, I can't produce while I'm DJing like all the time. And then the producer's like, well, I'm producing so much, I can't DJ.
Right.
Yeah.
So I'm kind of wondering, what are the two feelings between making music and playing the music that you think you will experience, approaching DJing now?
It was interesting. Last year, I did a playlist on Spotify called Jimmy Jam's Jams of 2023. And it was, what's his name? DJ Logic. We were having a conversation.
Okay.
And we were standing in line at this thing, and we were just having a conversation. And the conversation always goes to the, I don't ever hear good music anymore type of thing, or, that kind of thing. And I say, I hear good music all the time. And I go, what do you, and he said to me, what do you hear? And I sent him a couple of things. And he said, man, you should do a playlist. And I said, I don't even know how to do playlists. I said, I'm old. I don't do that. So anyway, he set me up on Spotify. We did like a collaborative playlist. And I put in like 40 songs or whatever that I thought were really good. And they kind of run the gamut. Some of them are dance music. Some of them are rock. Some of them are, acoustic, singer-songwriter type things. But it's just kind of all the things that I like. So this year I did the same thing, but I did it on Apple Music. And I did same thing, Jimmy Jam's Jams of 2024. And I just think it's fun to hear songs or turn people on to songs that maybe they wouldn't normally know, or find the connections between songs that they maybe wouldn't know exist. Like the fact that, a song like Someone to Call My Lover by Janet is Ventura Highway by America, So I just think it's a chance to kind of do that. And I also think it's a way to just to be creative in my mind. Because, and I understand the idea, if you're producing a lot, then you can't DJ, because that's been me. But I think as we get into, I call it the fourth quarter of our lives. Terry doesn't really like that, but as we get in the fourth quarter of our lives, to me, the things we're interested in doing right now, I mean, record production and all of that we love doing that. But I think we haven't done things in the live space at all. And we did 8 shows in Japan last year, which were amazing. And so we want to this year do more live shows where we actually play our catalog of music, which would be cool. And then I want to do, like I say, more of the DJing with that, with a little storytelling involved in that. And then in the documentary space, we're trying to tell some stories in that way. So to me, the production just kind of moves down just a little bit, I think, in the priority list. And but I think it will inform. I think everything informs the next thing.
Previously, how did DJing inform your production? Because you said you use samples like Papa Don't.
Yep.
Are you going into it as a musician like, yo, we should put the break here?
Oh, yeah,
just on some
absolutely.
DJ shit?
Oh, absolutely. I used to get the nicest compliments from DJs whenever we do remixes.
Yeah.
They would always love that we would do an intro for them. There would always be a break. Because I would always hate getting records and then there's nowhere to get out of it. Like, wait a minute, put a break. Or the best part of the record is in the center of the record, so I'd have to get 2 copies of it, and I'd start it in the center and then bring it back to the beginning.
Right.
Yeah.
And so I always felt like I had really good information, because of doing it. And I feel like I would like to have more of that now, particularly because we get asked to do remixes all the time. But I need to know, I feel like I should know by being in the club and having that experience what those should be now. days.
Like you had the Got Till You Going, you doing the scratches on the record.
Yeah.
You got the drum beat, you got the break beat.
Yes.
You got the break beat on That's the Way Love Goes. You got, you know. So are you like effectively saying, okay, I'm gonna go in the stacks for this one?
To me, it's all creativity. Like I remember I used to get asked back when sampling first started, and people would ask, you know how people ask a question, but they already know what, they think they know what you're going to say. So they ask it like, how do you feel about sampling?
Right.
And they expect me to go, oh, it's horrible. It's, you know, that's what they expect. And my answer was, I love it. And they go, huh? And I'd be like, no, I love it. Because to me, it brings the generations together. It connects music together in ways that nothing else can. And to me, it's really creative. And I've had a chance to, I mean, listen, it's one thing to put just a loop on, a popular loop, and build something over it. Puffy was always great at doing that. The track masters were always good at doing that. There were certain people that just had it. But then there were people that could chop it up like Dilla, who's the greatest to me. He's the GOAT to me.
Wow.
And he could just take like little snippets of little things and just make it so musical and so cool. So I just think that even in with the Recording Academy, there was no rap song category, if you think about it, because it wasn't thought of as creating a song. And I was able to go in with some other folks, obviously, and just kind of argue the fact that hip hop and rap was born out of turntables. So turntables are an instrument, and taking the beats and doing that is writing. It is a song. Just the elements we're using is a little different. You're not sitting at a piano, but you're playing a turntable. You're taking snippets of things and you're doing it. And so now there's a rap song category. But those kinds of things wouldn't have happened if it wasn't, to me, I'm being put in the position where I could make some changes and recognize it, where a traditional songwriter would be like, that's cheating or that's whatever. I never felt that way. We always embraced new technology. We always felt like it's just more tools to do what we do better.
Yeah.
You know?
How comfortable are you with other artists like sampling you? Like, and
love it.
You love it?
I love it. We get, you know,
Are
sample
you like
clearances.
approve?
Yes, pretty much. Pretty much.
How are they with you? Like older artists, like, you know, you did, you know, You're My Everything.
Yeah.
You sampled.
Yes.
You know?
Yeah. The stylistics.
Yeah.
No, I mean, everybody has been really cool. I mean, the funniest one I remember was we were talking about That's the Way Love Goes. And I remember James Brown, he said, I remember when we did it and we sent it to his people, and he wanted to know the lyrics of the song.
Okay.
Because he said, hey, that Janet Jackson's kind of risque.
The same anime hot pants?
Yeah, right.
The sex machine.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
That's
exactly. And we were like, no, Mr. Brown, we'll, you know, and we sent him the lyrics, and he loved it. He loved it. So, but that kind of thing happened. And, you know, I'll tell you another one that was really, we were shocked that she allowed it, but Joni Mitchell got Till It's Gone.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
When I remember when we did it, and I thought, we got to call Joni and whatever, but Janet knew Joni and called her, and she just said, Joni, we're sampling one of your songs we don't know. And Joni goes, oh, great, I can't wait to hear what you do with it.
Wow.
And we were like, so cool.
But you
And
guys did it justice. So,
oh man, thank you.
you know,
Big time.
something where
Thank you.
hard to be mad about that record.
No, it turned out great. And the cool thing about it was I had dinner with Joni probably about a year ago. And I remember one of the things she said was, she said, you know what I love about that record? And I said, what? And she said, every day somebody says to me, Joni Mitchell never lies.
Wow. That's hot.
She said, I love that. And so anyway, yeah, it was wonderful to be able to do that and connect, you know, folk and hip hop and R&B
and also,
all together on one song.
Oh, sorry.
No, go ahead.
Also, for a kid like me, you know, if you're in your teens and you hear that record, unless you have your parents are exposing you to Joni Mitchell,
Yeah.
I'm buying Joni Mitchell records because of
Yes.
that
Right.
song. So I'm looking at, like you said, I'm in the liner notes or whatever at that time, and you're looking it up, and your next trip to the record store, you're looking through Joni Mitchell trying to find
Big Yellow Taxi.
track ID. And that's why, you know, like what you're saying about sampling, there's no question that it is the direct link between our generation and the reason why we know about older music.
Yeah,
I mean,
Right.
Yeah.
unless you came from a real musical family where you're being exposed to stuff, that is the reason I know 90% of jazz records,
Yeah.
True.
funk and soul records, my whole record collection. So
It's the beautiful thing. It's the beautiful thing about hip hop.
Yep.
yeah,
Is that everyone who loves hip hop hears a sample, and then even before we wanted to be a DJ, we would go try to find where that sample came from, and we'd hear it,
Yep.
and it just make us more curious.
Yep.
And then we love the original, and then before you know it, we're just collecting all these originals.
yeah, you're looking at those
Yes.
liner
Right.
notes.
That's
You're
right.
seeing who's drumming and who's ever on those records.
Yeah.
It's just like a big web.
And we have like a higher appreciation for older music.
Yes.
If you were growing up in 90s and 80s hip hop. And, it's like you're looking back and you're like, oh my God, like the Heath brothers, for like, for One Love.
One
you're
Love,
just like,
yes.
oh my God, that the original is amazing in itself, and it's like, it's just one of those beautiful things about music that where sampling just really keeps older music alive.
But not even older music. They're sampling your stuff now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you
Oh,
have
which I love.
rappers,
I love
Poetic Justice with Kendrick Lamar.
I just was thinking
Drake,
about
and
that.
Stuff of
Yeah,
that nature.
I love that.
Now tell me this. Being that you have so many rappers using your stuff, I mean, they use slow jams, they use like everything in your catalog.
Mm-hmm.
Have you ever been approached by rappers to produce for them?
So we had another heated discussion.
Okay.
Because we know you worked with Ice-T,
Yes. First
and-
record that we did when we
Early.
came to LA. Yeah.
Captain Rap,
Captain Rap.
Bad Times.
Yeah.
That was a big record.
Oh man, that was the record, man. Love that record.
We know you worked with MC Light.
Yes.
And then, there's these kind of like gray areas where
Yeah.
you did like Mary J. Blige, Love Is All We Need with Nas.
With Nas. Uh-huh.
Yeah. And then even with, like you just spoke about with Q-Tip and Janet
Yes.
Jackson,
Yep.
Got Till It's Gone. And you worked with Dilla.
Yes.
And you worked with Walk Wild.
Well, we did. The funny thing, no, we never worked with Dilla.
You didn't?
No. I'll tell you my Dilla story. By the way, there's a group. Not a group. There's a book called Dilla Time. I don't know if you guys ever
Great
read that book.
Yeah.
It's a
Yeah,
great.
Sean
It's a
and
great book. So here was my Dilla experience. I went in Japan. This was back a while back now, and we did an interview. Or I did an interview. Terry didn't come, but I just did it. And I remember the DJ on the station said, "How's it? How do you like Japan?" And I said, "Oh, I love it. It's my first time here." He goes, "You've never been here?" And I said, "No, I've never been here before." So anyway, when my interview's wrapping up and I'm walking out, two guys are walking in, and it's Madlib and Peanut Butter Wolf.
Wow.
Wow.
And so we kind of say hello to each other and, what's up, blah, blah, blah. And he said, "Man, I can't believe you've never been here." I said, "No, I've never been," whatever. So anyway, I get in the car. We start driving away. So now I'm listening to the station. So now they're having a conversation about, "Man, can you believe Jimmy Jam's never been here before?" "No, whatever. So anyway, they have their conversation. And so then they said, "What do you got?" And he says, "Man, I got some new stuff. We did this record called J-Lib, and it's basically J Dilla and Madlib together and whatever." And they had this song. I never can remember the name of it, but it was like a bonus track, I guess. And I just remember this bass line came in and went boom, 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 boom. And I'm going, "Oh my God, listen to this." It was so mind-blowing that I almost made the driver turn around and go back to the station. I mean, it was that crazy. And then, fast forward maybe a month later, I was at the Village Studio working on some stuff. And in the little room, when you walk in, there was a little lounge there. And walking in, and there was a dude sitting there, and he said, "Jimmy Jam?" And I said, "Yeah." He says, "Peanut Butter Wolf." I said, "Dude, what's up?" I said, "What was that record, man?" He says, "Oh, yeah, that was J Dilla, whatever." And I didn't realize that JD and J Dilla was the same
guy.
person, right? And anyway, we got into a whole big discussion about it. And I said, "Man, I'd love to meet him, whatever." We never met. We never connected. But he totally inspired Got Till It's Gone. I mean, that's the reason that record even exists.
Now Q-Tip was on Got Till You Gone. Is it possible that he may have been in the studio and you just didn't know him? Because they had a production thing together.
No, I know they did.
Right.
Yeah,
The
yeah,
Uma.
the Uma.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Wait, but Dilla has credit on that record or no?
No, Dilla doesn't have
He
credit.
doesn't have credit.
But he wasn't there.
Oh, wow.
And we've researched this a few times. I remember back in the before it was X, when it was Twitter. I remember back in the Twitter days when I think it might have been JD's birthday or something, and I just texted something and just said, happy birthday, Dilla, whatever. And then a bunch of people came at me and said, hey, man, you stole his record and you didn't give him credit and whatever.
Wow.
And I thought, wow, really? I said, wait, where are you hearing this? So anyway, we got into a whole thing. Well, I guess
do that with people on Twitter.
Yeah, right. No, I know.
Just leave it alone.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. You're talking the lowest common denominator.
Yeah, well, I really wanted to find out why somebody thought that. That was my thing. I felt like, well, why do you feel that way? And they said, well, because, he did this interview in the UK or something, and he said that you did. And that's why when he did the remix, it was called Dilla's Revenge, I think. It was called Dilla's Revenge. And I said, no. I said, that's not. I said, I can tell you exactly what the story is. And I actually told the story to Dan, who did the Dilla Time book, who actually, when they redid the book in paperback, that's actually the longer story that I told about that. But I said, I remember so distinctly what this was, because we knew she wanted to do a record with Q-Tip. So my thing is, as a producer, we're always thinking, what can we do to make the artist feel like it's their record, like they're right at home in their thing? And so we kind of thought, let's do. And so when I heard Brand New Heavies, I think it was, he did a remix of Sometime.
Yeah, that was a great record.
Oh my God, that was like the mind-blowing record. So in my mind, I want to make Sometimes. I want to make that feel with that kind of. I wanted to have that kind of little feel to it, right? So I had a drum programmer named Alex Richburg, and he had set up this whole MPC thing. And I would normally just put a drum beat down and then just play live, right? He said, no, you got to use the drum machine and actually do it in the drum machine. I said, okay, cool. So he sets everything up. And so because it's my first time doing it, I'm like, I'm going to do the simplest thing I can possibly do, which was blump, 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 blump. And I figured, okay. So I put that in. And then the bass line, I just said, let me do a drunk Dilla type bass line. And I'd go boom, 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 boom. And I'm kind of doing that, right? So then I'd get, and now I'm going to put the beat on it. And the beat was supposed to be like a swing. It was supposed to be, it was supposed to be like that.
Right.
I couldn't figure out how to quantize it to make it swing. Couldn't figure it out. So anyway, I get this beat and it's just straight. And I'm hating it. So I remember this is a Sunday night. I leave. I'm like, forget it. I'm done, right? The next day, Alex comes to the studio. It's a Monday. And he said, did you do it? And I said, yeah, I did a little something. I said, I can't get it to swing. And he goes, oh, man. And he just goes in, hits a couple knobs. And now it's there. And so now it's there. So I was like, oh, okay, cool. So then the idea of the sample was always in my mind. I love Big Yellow Taxi, right? So I always thought, man, it'd be cool to do a song with that. So when I put that in, I said I wanted to sound like a DJ was doing it, but I couldn't really scratch. Scratching was not my thing. So what I did is I put it in a sampler. It was a sampler called an AMS, and I put it in the sampler, and I just would push it, and I go na, 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 like that kind of thing.
Right.
But then there was a keyboard I had called an MR76, and I would take the MR76, and it had scratches in it. So I would do it like that, and then I go on the keyboard. So just to kind of to fake it. Basically, I was faking because I was trying to just create this kind of sonic. And when Q-Tip heard it, he loved it. But in the studio, I remember there's literally him and Janet went in together. They had a conversation. He came up with his rap. He did his thing, and we did it in New York. But he didn't have anybody with him. It was literally him by himself. And I've asked him about that a few times because I said, listen, if Dilla thinks he's on the record for some reason, maybe he is, maybe I don't know. But I said, I know my track, and I have the stems and I know exactly what's there. He's not there. But I didn't want to disrespect him in any way, and I'd never met him. So I thought, well, it'd be great to meet him and stuff. And of course, that never happened. But I do remember on the Grammys when we did the In Memoriam segment, and Dilla was in part of that segment. That was me raising my hand going, we got to put Dilla in this segment, you know. And his mom was there. Ma Dukes was there.
Yeah, this is really important.
And,
got this out.
And it was a great thing. So anyway, we never met, but I love his music.
So Q-Tip didn't produce any of that song. It's just...
No.
Wow.
No.
That's crazy.
All right, well, that's the first
There's
minute of me knowing
there's
that.
always been this tone that
we've always
Dilla,
no, I know there is.
Yeah.
I know there is. And once again, in saying that, I'm basically telling my story. I'm not refuting his. I'm just telling mine. You know, he has whatever he believed happened. I have what I believe happened. And that's it. But I would not disrespect him, and I would not respect I just don't want to disrespect him in any way. He was absolutely 100% the inspiration for the song. But to my knowledge, had no and any other. I used to have I have the multi tracks of it. You know, this is back in the multi tracks. This is before Pro Tools. I mean, I have the multi tracks. He's not. Well,
send us
on there.
Send us the steps.
We're gonna need to hear him.
DJ.
Proof of that.
Wait.
That's mind blowing.
This is crazy.
You heard it?
You're talking to like, there's 4 DJs.
Yeah.
I would say we would have all said 100% Q-Tip had a hand in the production.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
like your
Jay-
guys did it together.
And maybe Dill, I didn't know, if so, but
I think that's the only thing we agreed on.
it was like,
before.
that was our
we're
only
like,
combo. We're like, we don't even
agree
discuss
on
it,
that.
but it's another feather in your cap that you just produced that, because
incredible.
to us, that sounds like a hip hop producer making R&B.
Yeah.
Like, I wouldn't have assumed necessarily, but is it?
I think we're good. And part of it starts from the way we would always listen to records, because once again, we would always very much analyze and forensically take apart records, like when we would hear them. Like, why does this sound like this? Why does this feel like this? And then we would try to then inject that into the songs we made. So like when we did Just Be Good to Me, for instance, we had Take Your Time, Do It Right as the template.
Right.
You know, we knew if we had a song that had a bass line that repeated, that was repetitive, we had a melody that was very repetitive, and we had like glockenspiel bells over the top of it to make it kind of classier, whatever you want to call it.
Right.
We knew that was kind of the combination of stuff, and so that's what we did on Just Be Good to Me, and it sounded like the SOS band, or the way people perceive the SOS band. But we did that with all the artists that we worked with. It was always about, you mentioned Everything with Mary J. Blige. When Mary J. came to Minneapolis, we played her a bunch of songs, and she didn't like anything we played her. And we were like, well, what do you want, Mary? She said, I want something that sounds like me. And I remember it was her and her sister. And I was like, okay, something that sounds like you. And I said, well, we got this track here. And I played it, and it was the track that ended up becoming Love Is All We Need.
The Rick James.
The Rick James loop, right? And as soon as she heard that, she said, oh, hell yeah. And she got up and started doing the Mary J. Blige dance.
Right.
And she was like, this is what I'm talking about. This is what I'm talking about. And I said, yeah, but you're getting this from Puffy, right? And she said, no, I ain't working with Puffy. And we were like, oh, you're not? Oh, okay, well, then we got this other one. And we played her Everything.
Wow.
Oh my God.
And she was like, oh, okay. Because it was like, we could do that for you, but we figured Puffy's got that handled. We'll just move and do something a little different.
And that's got the payback in there.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, yep.
Wow.
So that was what it was. But I mean, literally, I think we were always good at really studying, like I say, forensically, what worked for an artist, what they liked, what was their comfort zone, and then creating that for them. So for Mary, so that's why Mary's tracks don't sound anything like Janet's tracks or whatever. You know, it was all that kind of thing. And No More Drama was the same way. It was just like, I was a Young and Restless. I still am. I still watch Young and Restless, the soap opera. But that little bing, ding, 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 that little piano part. And I was like, that sounds like Mary. Because Mary was at that point where she was trying to get out of, the drama in her life. It just seemed like the right thing. And it worked out.
Yeah.
Is there a reference point for that? I could do this for almost your entire catalog. Ask me where it came from. But for Together Again, specifically, does that come from somewhere? Because that's just a song that I play. I'd say almost every time I DJ.
Yeah.
I play that record.
I love that. Thank you.
And is there somewhere where that is kind of like?
So Together Again the concept was that a friend of hers had died from AIDS, and she wanted to do a song that was upbeat and positive about remembering him. And so in my mind, I always thought that Janet always, for me, melodically, always reminded me of Diana Ross, right? Yeah. She wasn't, Whitney Houston or Mahalia Jackson. That wasn't her thing. Her thing was a simple melody with a beautiful tone, and that's what Diana Ross was. So that song, if you listen to that song, I always loved that kind of Motown-y vibe, but I also love Philadelphia.
Yeah.
That song to me was the mashup between Motown and Philadelphia.
Like a love hangover type of thing.
Yeah. Oh, and it's starting out slow. That was the thing. I said, if we're going to make this song, let's start it off slow. And she hated that idea, right? But I remember I said, no, let's start it real slow and then go into the beat, Yeah. And, but, eventually it turned out okay. But,
Yeah, it turned out okay. It turned out all right.
Turned out okay. But no, it's great. And she ends her concerts with it. People love it. And it's nice to have a song like that to me. That's just kind of that worldwide universal song that people get.
Yeah.
But it's a very kind of sophisticated song, the way that it works with the B sections and we always, in the songwriting, the traditional part of songwriting, we do like B sections and choruses and verses and, doing different things. So I think that song kind of does that.
Jesus. All right, here's the question.
The question.
One of the very favorite DJ records that we have that a lot of people don't even know or attribute to you, but it is incredible, is Bad Girl by Usher. It's a DJ staple.
Crazy. Yeah, crazy record.
Yeah.
Here's the argument.
Okay.
Well, are you talking about the keyboards?
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh.
Go ahead, bro.
So I saw a YouTube video where you were touring your studio. And there was a conversation about a song you did in guitars. And you were just like, I think the conversation was like, I think either you were getting like free guitars and the host was like, little did they know you never use guitars. All your guitars are in the keyboards.
That's right. Because I can't play guitar.
Right.
Yeah.
So that was a keyboard?
So when we hear Bad Girl, which just has a strong guitar riff.
Yeah.
And
like name that tune in one note.
Yeah,
right.
Exactly. And then like every DJ just drops that on the one.
Yep.
I was telling him, I'm like, well, Jimmy Jam just used his keyboard, and I just saw this interview. So now I'm wondering if that was a keyboard on Bad Girl.
That's a great question, and to be honest, I don't really know. Because because
still in the running.
Wait.
I'm still in the running.
You know what? I can text the guys that we worked with that song on, the Avila Brothers.
Oh, okay.
And ask, because I don't think that was an actual guitar. I mean, it is a real guitar, but I think it's a loop.
Okay.
That was created.
Yeah.
That was created. And the reason I think that is because every time not every time we play it live, because we've only done like a few shows, but when we play it live, there's no guitar player I've ever heard that's been able to duplicate that.
Right.
And I always just use the loop from the record. And then come in with some other stuff. I mean, there's some other stuff. Bobby Avila plays guitar, I know, on there, but the actual loop on that, I think that's a loop, if I'm not mistaken.
So you're saying it's a loop from a live session?
Yes.
Of a guitar just riffing?
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah, I believe so. I'll check into that for you. I'll ask. I never ask. I never really thought about it.
It's not one of his more memorable records, so it's easy to forget. It's only like the making process behind it.
I'll
doesn't rank high.
No, that record was a bit of. Sometimes we would get records where we didn't necessarily originate that song. That was a song that had already kind of got started, and it was not going anywhere. Like, it just wasn't making sense. And I think Usher, if I'm not mistaken, and Terry could tell this story better than me, actually, because Terry worked a lot closer to Usher on this record than me. But I think the Gimme One of Them was actually the hook of the record. And Terry was like, no, man, that can't be the hook of the record. That can be like a after chant or something. But we got to come up with a better hook.
That makes a lot
and
of
it
sense.
totally got rewritten, and then we put a bridge in the middle of it.
Yeah,
There's all that kind of stuff. So yeah, that was one where it kind of had started and was going down the wrong path, and we ended up doing that. You remind me, by the way, that's an interesting one too.
Oh man.
Because Terry there was a demo vocal that Usher had done, and he had done it with a guy named Hustle, Eddie Hustle had actually written the song. And Eddie, when he did the demo, it was a really good demo vocal, but Usher was copying his vocal. And L.A. Reid called us and he said, man, I got this record, man. He said, it's either my first single or off the album. And we're like, what are you talking about? He said, Usher's not singing it like himself. And he's trying to sing it like the demo, and it ain't working. And I told Usher he needs to go back in and sing it again. But he said the only person he'll go back in to sing it with is Terry Lewis.
Wow.
And I was like, okay, I'll tell Terry. So, he
now,
called.
had you guys worked with each other before this?
Oh, yeah. We definitely did. Matter of fact, we had done, that was the thing. We had done a bunch of songs on 8701.
Okay.
And so this was like this was kind of the last thing that was happening, but we had gotten a great rapport. And as a matter of fact, I will say, Usher really saved Terry in a way, because Terry was very much, as all creative people do. I know you guys understand this as creators. Like, you go through those periods where it's just not hitting. You're not not motivated, or you're not inspired,
Mm-hmm.
And that was happening to Terry. He just wasn't feeling inspired. And I said, man, you got to meet Usher, because I'd worked with Usher on this Kazam soundtrack record, and I thought he was amazing. And I said, you got to meet Usher. And the minute they met, they just connected. Like, they were just like, oh man. And Terry got all these great ideas, and they started doing stuff. So that was the thing. And a lot of times in that kind of case, I would kind of move out. I'd let them do their thing. And Usher, for a while, he said he interviewed for our documentary, and he actually said, I didn't think Jimmy liked me. and I was like, no, dude. I said, I was just giving you and, Terry room to do your thing. Yeah. I didn't want to try to be the third toe or whatever, so fifth toe, whatever the analogy. Anyway, but yeah, that's the thing. So Terry and Usher came, I think they might have come to LA to do it. And I remember it was literally, I think it took him like 6 days to do the vocal. Like 3 days were unlearning the song.
Wow.
And then the next 3 days were sing it like yourself.
Right.
Sing it like Usher. Because Terry asked him, he said, we would ask all the artists, what's the most important thing about a record? So if you said to Usher, what's the most important thing about an Usher record? And most people would go, well, the beat or the something or the something. I think Usher was the only one to ever get the question right. We said, Usher, what's the most important thing about an Usher record? He said, me. And we said, yes. That's the answer. And so that was the thing with him. He knew what it needed to be, but Terry was saying, a barber can't cut the back of his own head. So Usher's looking here, but Terry's behind him going, yeah, we can clean that up a little bit back there. You can't see that. Right. And that's what it is. And so when they came back, I remember we sent it to LA, and LA called us a couple days later and said, first single. I said, cool. Because he sang the heck out of it. Yeah.
What was the difference in the performances or
Because one performance was Usher trying to sing like someone else because he liked the demo. So he was trying to sing it like the demo singer, which sounded perfectly fine for the demo singer to do. But it didn't sound like Usher. And so Terry's like, no, you got to make this your own song.
Right.
You got to sing like, we would always say, there's this old singer, Neil Sedaka, and he always used to say, sing it like yourself, don't sing like Neil Sedaka, And that was our saying, and that was the thing. It was to try to make you the most you can possibly be. That was always the goal with Usher, well, really with all the artists, but certainly with someone like Usher.
Was that typically what Terry did? He focused on a lot of the vocal performances?
Terry's vocal master.
Really?
He's vocal master. We did a Jam and Lewis project a couple of years back, and we had a song with Mary J. Blige on there. And I remember when I called Mary to see what she thought of, the mix and everything, and she said, Terry Lewis kicked my ass on this song. But she said, this is my favorite vocal. This is a great vocal on this song. Wow. Said, yeah. So he's really good at motivating. He doesn't let singers be lazy, and people that can really, like a Mary or an Usher, people that can really, really sing good,
right.
A lot of times they'll get in with a producer and everything they sing, they think, oh man, that's great. And Terry's like, you bullshitting on that. That ain't, you know what I'm saying? So I think that's Terry's thing. He's very motivating and very like, no, we can get this better. We can get this better.
You guys are doing a volume 2?
Yes, we are. We're working on it right now, as a matter of fact.
Exclusive.
We are. Yeah, we're excited about it.
I do want to talk about that release that was in 2021.
Yes.
Which was like Jimmy Jam and Terry Lewis debut album.
Yes.
For your first releases, which was an amazing. I mean, Tony Braxton, you had everyone there, Mariah Carey,
Mary J,
and it was like I listened to it, and it's audibly and sonically amazing. It's just beautiful.
Thank you so much.
And I saw a couple of interviews talking about it and how it was kind of it was a mixture of new music and old music.
Because what happened was back going back to What Have You Done For Me Lately?
Yeah.
That was basically, Terry and I this was 85, we were going to do our own album, a Jam and Lewis album. And actually we had a group, we were going to call it The Secret. And Monty was going to be part of the group, and we had a girl, singer, guitar player. And we were going to do this record. So we were making tracks for that album. And it ended up, when we started working on Control and doing Control, John McClain, who was the A&R guy on Janet, he came up to Minneapolis to listen to everything we had done. We played him Control and Nasty and When I Think of You and Funny How Time Flies. And like we played him all these jams, right? And like all A&R people, he goes, I just need one more. So what are you talking about, man? He's like, anyway, just need one more. So anyway, we're playing him our stuff. We said, no, listen to our album, right? So we're playing him just tracks. And one of the tracks comes on and he goes, that's the one I need right there. We said, what are you talking about? For Janet. I need that one for Janet. We said, no, man, it's for our album. He said, no, play it for her. And if she likes it, give it to her. And we're like, oh, okay, we're just giving her songs away. Okay, cool. So the next day, come to the studio. And we didn't even say anything. Janet came down, sat on the couch outside the control room. And we just put the song on, or just the track on. And we're blasting the track. And she's kind of watching the TV, looking at the TV. She kind of puts her head down. And she walks to the door. She kind of leans on the door and she looks at me and Terry and she kind of points at us. And when the song goes off, she goes, who's that for? And we said, you if you want it. And she said, oh, I want it.
Oh, wow.
And that became What Have You Done For Me Lately? So it ended up being her first single. And basically she took another song from our album, which ended up being the song after on the album, which was called You Can Be Mine.
Wow.
Which actually, New Kids on the Block actually kind of lifted on that
Wow.
Right stuff.
on the right stuff. Yeah. There's a part in that song in You Can Be Mine that's actually that song. But anyway, yeah, that was how that happened. So that derailed our album. And every time we would work with somebody, then later on we would go, hey, we want to do a song for our album. And they go, yeah, great. And we do the song. And then they go, oh, I need that one though for me. And so we'd give it to them.
Oh, man.
And so finally, about 5 years before that, we got selfish. And we just said, no. We're keeping these for ourselves.
So you seen all these Quincy Jones types of albums where he's just got all these people and he's putting out, and you're just like, damn, we had a whole album.
Yeah.
So that album, your first volume 1, your debut album, was music that you've been like intentionally building for your own album since 1986, 85?
Yes.
Wow.
That's insane.
Yeah.
Wow.
I heard there's some tracks that may be from like Alexander O'Neal, some Vault stuff.
We have a ton of Vault stuff.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, we have a ton of Vault stuff.
When do you think volume 2 is going to drop?
Probably later this year. I mean, we're working on it's one of the things we want to do.
Later this year.
I mean, later this year, hopefully. We'll see. We were just talking about that as we were kind of strategizing the year. We kind of had to literally get through the Grammys first. And now as we're kind of laying out our year, I think, like I say, 2 documentaries that are happening, some live dates we'd like to do, both orchestral and festival. And I think the third part of that, as far as recording, along with we're going to do some other recording things, but the main thing will be finishing volume 2.
Wow. Them streaming numbers about to go up.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll see.
You know, it's funny you brought up What Have You Done For Me Lately. There's this great like kind of tidbit about the bass line.
Oh,
how
yes.
like everyone asks you, I can't figure out where that bass line came from.
Yeah.
And then, I mean, you could probably tell it better than me, but it's a xylophone, right, on your keyboard?
It's actually a steel drum.
Steel drum.
Wow.
It's a steel drum. So it's a and by the way, the bass part and the dun, 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 king, same sound.
Wow.
They're the same sound.
Just pitched differently.
Just pitched differently. Yeah.
Wow.
And so
where did you think to use the steel drum for the bass as well? Was it a mistake or?
No, it was because I always play bass with my left hand and chords with my right hand. It's just a style that I play. And I learned that from my dad. Right? So whenever I call up a sound on a keyboard, and in this case, it was an OB8, Oberheim OB8 keyboard. And matter of fact, the preset was D4, I think was the preset.
Sheesh.
And it was steel drum. And it wasn't called steel drum, but that's what it was. You know, you could tell it was a steel drum. And so anyway, when I dialed it up, as I'm just flipping through sounds trying to figure out what it should be, and I'm thinking on the right hand, I thought that dun, 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 gun, gun, gun would be cool. So I just, on my bottom hand, I didn't split the keyboard in half with different sounds. I just used that same sound. And I liked the way the two things sounded together. So then I just said, well, just roll with that. And if you go back and if anybody ever hears the stems of that song, there's probably 12 tracks of drums and one bass and one the little chords, and there might be a little, I think on the bridge there might be another extra added keyboard, but there might be 3 or 4 tracks that are keyboard, and the rest is all drums, and then of course the vocals. But that was all 24 track recording back in that day. That wasn't 48 track recording. So we were fitting all of that stuff on all those songs, on Nasty and When I Think of You and all that. Yeah, it was all in 24 track.
It, you know, here like Ross was saying, I would love to hear a breakdown on almost every song.
I guess we don't have time.
We did have this conversation. I want to bring it back because we wanted to ask you something. And, you know, I brought up, you know, your hip hop production, working with Mary, MC Light, Ice-T, Captain Rap.
Yeah.
Why haven't you produced more hip hop?
Because I think we're good at knowing what we're good at. And I think there's people that do it so much better than we do.
Really?
Yeah, I do. I mean, I think we actually, I'll tell you one that we did that never saw the light of day. But we actually did a record. We actually didn't do a record. We did a bunch of tracks for Snoop Dogg. And this was probably,
my God,
man,
exclusive.
2000.
Is this there when he got together with Charlie Wilson, like 2004, 2002?
Right in that area, right in that 2004 area, because I remember we had built our studio. We had a studio in Santa Monica that we had built. And I remember it was kind of around that time period. And we've kind of talked about it since then. And I think he was, I won't say he was intimidated because I don't think that's what it was necessarily. I always thought he didn't like what we had done for him, maybe. But I think nowadays he goes, I think he might have even asked Terry at one point in time, whatever happened to those tracks y'all did?
Maybe he wasn't ready for it because that was his first real foray into having like an R&B.
That's very true.
Yeah.
That's very true.
Because he started working with Neptunes and stuff of that nature.
Drop it like it's hot.
Yeah.
That's right.
I mean, beautiful.
So you might want to revisit that. I know it's a lot of rappers that sample your stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, like even like this, I wouldn't say softer stuff, but like Alexander O'Neal, like die by that. Die by those records.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
Look, optimistic.
Yeah.
People rhyme over that.
No, I know. No, I appreciate it.
Why are you yelling at?
I mean, we gotta get some hip hop. Jimmy Jam. We gotta get some Jam and Lewis.
Why are you yelling at Jimmy Jam?
We gotta get some Jam and Lewis hip hop, man. We need some Jam and Lewis hip hop.
No, I listen. There's people that do it so well that I admire. You know, and I just feel like when I listen to like the records that are just move me as far as the greatest hip hop records of all time, I just feel like we aren't capable of doing that. There may be a combination of things we could maybe do and make that work, but just because we're good at one thing doesn't mean we're good at everything.
I think we all disagree.
Yeah.
I trust your intuition, though. You have good intuition on these things, and it feels like we'd all love to hear more hip hop.
I would think that like, I don't know. We were like so perplexed. We were like, well, why? What is it with hip hop? Like, why haven't they worked more?
Did they not reach out? Did the artists think that you're more?
Is that what it's about?
Well,
like the artists not reaching out?
Well, it's interesting because a lot of it's so even beyond even hip hop, just in general, a lot of people don't reach out to us because they say that we're busy. They know we're busy. They're like, oh, I know you're busy, and I always go. And I might have said this earlier because it's just my saying. I said, yes, we're busy doing things we like to do with the people we like to do them with.
Right.
So if you don't ask, I mean, we go to when we're invited, we go. So if somebody says, come to the studio. I mean, Charlie Puth called me last week and said, hey, I'm going to be at such and such studio. Do you want to come by? Yes, I'd love to.
What a flash.
That'd be great.
No, the best one for me was last year, right around this time, maybe a little bit later in the year, but right around this time, Inflow was in town working on some stuff. And he hit me and he said, hey man, can you come by the studio? And I said, yeah. And I came by and I ended up working with him for a month. We did a Michael Kiwanuka album. We worked on some Salt stuff. We worked on some different stuff. And I was just a keyboard player. I didn't have to produce because he's such a brilliant producer.
You were working on some Salt stuff?
Well, it's whatever he intends it to be. Okay. We don't know as the way he works is you just do the sessions and then he figures out where it goes. Is it Cleo Soul? Is it Salt? Is it Michael Kiwanuka?
Oh my God.
And with Michael Kiwanuka, we worked with Danger Mouse on that, which was amazing. And Danger Mouse would just go, man, would you put an organ on this? Yeah, I'll put an organ on. Like it was just just a kind of a free session
collaborative
type thing. Yeah. And he brought in a beautiful string session. I hooked him up with the guy that does Kanye's Sunday service, the choir director of that, because he wanted a choir. And I said, I'll hook you up with this dude. So I like to just connect people like that and just let them, make music. So I don't know. I mean, if it's something I feel strongly about, like I feel like we're the best people to do it, I think that's when we do it. If we don't feel we're the best people to do it, we pass it on. I get a hug every time I see Nerida Michael Walden, right? And it's because when Aretha Franklin was working on a record and Clive Davis flew us to LA and said, hey, I'm making this Aretha Franklin record. Are you guys interested in the record? And we said, yeah, I love Aretha, whatever. And so as we're talking about it, we said, well, who else is producing on the record? And he talked about a couple people. And then he said, and there's this young gentleman, Nerida Michael Walden. And we said, oh, he's the one. He's the one to do the record. And Clive said, well, he's kind of young and kind of untested and whatever. And we said, no, he's not untested. He's the dude. Trust me, he's the dude, right? And so we ended up not doing anything on the record. But a couple months later, or 3 months, 4 months later.
Big hit.
I'm Freeway of Love, brother.
Yeah.
Nerida Michael Walden.
And he's on a record with Whitney.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing that started that.
Yeah.
So when he did Freeway of Love, then all of a sudden that turned into, How Will I Know? I Want to Dance with Somebody, and all this stuff. So every time we would see Nerida, he'd hug and he'd say, thank you.
Wow.
Right? So it's like we're not the right thing for everybody. There's one other one. I don't even know that you guys will know this. There was a British group back after we did Human League. Human League was big.
That was what I was going to ask about next, because that was another discussion we had. How does Human League get into the picture?
Right.
Yeah. Did they ask you, or is that a label?
Jimmy Jam, Terry Lewis making new wave?
Yeah, right. Well, I'll tell you, I'll go back to that. I'll tell you how that happened. But I will say after Human, a lot of the British bands kind of looked this up, and one of them was the band ABC. So ABC came over, and they were working at A&M Records at the studios over there. And I remember they said, we got this song that we want you guys to hear. We want you guys to produce it. And we said, okay, let's check it out. So we go in, we listen to the song. The song is amazing. And Terry said, I got 4 words for you. Can we cuss on this show?
Yes, of course.
So
there's no advertisers.
Yeah, okay,
Please.
So Terry said, I got 4 words for you. And they said, what's that? He said, put that shit out.
Wow.
And they said, what do you mean? He said, put that shit out. He said, you don't need us on that record. That record's done. That's a done record. Ain't nothing to do with that record, but put up some CDs and we'll go to the record store and buy it.
Wow.
And they were like, damn, really? And it was a song called How to Be a Millionaire.
Tell me
And
something, yeah.
it was a big, right? And it was this beautiful record, man. It's like, you don't need us for that record. I'll give you one other example like that. So Pink. Pink had come to town. LA was doing the record, and it was on her second album. And of course, the first album was huge, right? R&B record. Second album, she had gone off in this kind of rock direction, right? And LA was really concerned because as record people are concerned, I got to sell records. You're going to alienate your audience and that whole thing. So when she came to Minneapolis, I remember, we ended up writing a song together. It was actually really good. And so after that, we said, you don't really need us. Like, what do you need us for? And she said, well, their record company's a little scared because it's such a departure from what I was doing. And we said, can we hear what you're doing? And she said, yeah. And so she played us all of her stuff, right? And it was stunning, just beautiful, right? And so I said, this stuff is amazing. I said, what's the problem? And she said, well, just, I don't know, LA feels like, whatever. I said, I'll call LA. So I called LA and I said, okay, LA, I want you to take your record company hat off for a minute. And I said, let me just appeal to you as an artist, as a music lover. I said, there was this young woman from Canada. She was young, had some hits in Canada, kind of a cool little thing. I said, and then she came to America. She made a record called Jagged Little Pill.
Alanis
Morissette. And I said it was a total different direction for her, but it blew her up. It made her, one of the most important, rock female in history probably at that point. So, and he said, yeah. And I said, let me give you one other example. I said, there was a guy who had a big album, #1 record. I think we double platinum record. I said, the next record he did, he put on some leg warmers and bikinis and a trench coat. And he said, Prince. I said, right, Dirty Mind. I said, now Dirty Mind wasn't the biggest selling record, but it totally set the direction for everything that came after. Controversy, 1999, Purple Rain, all that came from planting the seeds of Dirty Mind. And he said, wait a minute, you're saying that Pink is Alanis Morissette and Prince? And I said, yes, in my opinion. Now, put your record company hat on. I know you're you think that there's not a record that gets you from that first record to the second record, but there is. Get the Party Started. I said that record is going to be a smash with the people that already love Pink, but it's also going to open up the audience to what her next records are.
Wow.
And so a couple months, once again, a couple months later, because, there's not the communication like there is now, and you can't just put stuff out digitally. You got to actually, print stuff up. A couple months later, we started getting phone calls from people, and they said, "What'd y'all do on the Pink record?" I said, "We didn't do anything on the Pink record." I said, "Well, but it's in the notes. Thanks you guys." She said, "Thanks Jimmy Jam and Terry Lewis." And I said, "Oh, we made a phone call." So
that's great.
So maybe volume 2, we might get one hip hop song. Maybe.
Yeah. I think so.
I think so. I think so.
One artist that you would make a hip hop song for.
Oh, wow.
Snoop Dogg might be in the pocket. Man, this comes out, maybe he'll,
Yeah, no, Snoop would be great. I love Snoop. But
we might have an interview with him next week.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's awesome. I think, wow, that's a great question. Who would it be? Oh, yeah. Well, okay. This is going to sound really weird, but it won't sound really weird. But I actually have a song, or I should say we have a song, but I have it's on my computer. So when I say that I did it long ago. I did it for Drake, actually.
Really?
Ooh.
And I think it's an amazing song for him. And lyrically, I can't say what the lyrics are, but the lyrics are perfect kind of for where he's at right now.
Yeah.
They're the perfect lyrics. And I've done that before where there's been songs that we've written where the timing of it wasn't maybe right when the song was written, but when it would be time to release it, I think it would be a great song for him to release.
Well, he's already used you for Poetic Justice.
Absolutely. Which was very cool, man. Him and Kendrick together. Which is how ironic is that? The song that they're together on is our song.
Yes.
So, I mean, listen, I think we bring people together. That's what we do. Jam and Lewis, our 50-year relationship.
What's the BPM of this?
Yeah,
this
what's the
Drake
BPM?
song? What's the BPM?
That was my next question.
So we can imagine and
Yes.
fantasize.
Oh, it's
As a DJ, ooh.
yeah. No, it's
it's
not
up tempo.
No, it's not a banger. It's not a banger. It's definitely one of the emotional side of Drake type songs.
Well, people are kind of wanting that, to tell you.
That's what I think too. That's why I'm saying as we're manifesting this now, I think that the song is perfect right now for him and what he wants to say. I'm not saying what the lyrics are. I just know the hook of the song is perfect for what he's going through right now.
Road exclusive.
You got to get it.
Road exclusive. Road exclusive. Produced by
Make some
Road
calls.
and Jimmy Jam.
We just want to thank you in the liner note.
Jam, you got to send
Shouts
it.
to Road.
You got to send it to them because they're doing the Party Next Door and Drake thing. That might work perfectly.
Yeah.
With Party Next Door and Drake.
He's in Australia, time difference, but you'll be okay.
Yeah, I know. I love
Amazing.
Party Next Door, man. Brother. I love that brother. Hey, Work with Rihanna.
Yes.
That
Ridiculous.
samples If You Were Here Tonight.
What?
By Alexander O'Neal. By the way, that's one of the songs in my DJ set. I play Work, but I put his vocal over the top of it because it's the same. Because they had to clear it with us because it's the same. That's why it goes on Work. If you were here tonight.
Now you know
that's what it's from.
And it's a reggae version.
It's a reggae version.
Version of that song.
That's right.
That uses it.
That's right.
So your DJ set, you're actively putting this together.
Oh, absolutely.
You've been putting this
yes. Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
Wait, so what are you using right now? Serato?
I use Serato. I just got the new Rain. I don't even know what it's called, but whatever the latest
with
Rain
the spinning
is.
dish?
With the spinning dish, which I
that
love.
Just came out, right?
Yes.
Yeah, it just came
The
out.
Performer.
The Performer. Thank you.
The Rain Performer.
The Rain Performer. That's what I have, and I love it. I'm really enjoying it.
I would love to see how you're organizing your crates.
Yeah.
Stuff I made, stuff other people made.
Wait, do you know DJ Severe from the Dodger Stadium?
Oh, of course. Yeah. I just saw him at NAMM last week, a couple weeks back. Yeah.
Yeah, he told me that you went in there and you saw the Rain 1 that he uses.
Yes.
And that inspired you to get the newer version of it?
Well, yes, because I know. So once again, just the connectivity of stuff. The company that owns Rain is all the same company that owns Moog.
Oh.
And I had done a thing. Moog introduced a new version of the Mini Moog. So I'd gone to Sweetwater to do a demonstration of the synthesizer. And I met all the folks there and stuff. Yeah, it was very cool. And I even did a thing like when you walk into their place, it's like a museum, right? There's like all these old instruments and stuff. And I did like a little walk through that. It was kind of cool. Anyway, had a great relationship with them. And so when the company that owned Rain bought Moog, then the guy who was running Moog became like the president of this kind of whole company. So last year at NAMM, he showed me not only the Moog synthesizers, but he showed me all the Akai gear because that's under their stuff now. So all the Akai stuff is under theirs. And he showed me all these different things, but he said, we're going to do these controllers. We're going to try to, because I believe Pioneer is probably the leader in that. And he said, we're going to try to do some stuff that's, along the lines of that, but we have Serato, but we also have our own STEM program that works with the MPC stuff. Mm-hmm. So anyway, that was this whole thing. And it just got into this conversation. And so when they were getting ready to come out with a performer, I think the Avila brothers, who I mentioned before, that worked with us over the years as producers, DJ who did the Super Bowl with Usher. Mm-hmm. And he had a custom one done. He had basically the prototype of it. And so then they sent me the new one, but then I hooked Severe up with the guy from Rain. From Rain. And so now I think that's what he's rocking too, and a couple of other people that I know. But yeah, it's a nice setup. I really like it a lot. Feels very comfortable, and I like the physicality of it because I didn't like the kind of the wimpy wheels, Mm-hmm. But I didn't necessarily want to go all the way back to turntables because I never was like a scratcher anyway. That was not my forte. So yeah, but I like that a lot. I like that product a lot.
Wow. So we'll be expecting more DJ sets coming through.
Hopefully so, yeah.
And I know you've been doing this great live kind of storytelling event with Elijah from Late Development.
Yep.
Yeah, it was crazy.
Yeah, it was so cool.
It was interactive. It was just like one of those, and he plays and he does like a lot of the origin stories of the songs, and people were losing their mind.
Yeah.
And I'm not just saying that because I was playing it.
No. I'm really looking forward to it.
Is there a record that you wish you had done? Like, is there like a producer envy? Like, damn, I really wish I had that record. I really wish I had done that record.
Wow, that's a great question. Okay, so I'll tell you the song that comes to, well, I don't even know that I wish, yeah, maybe I do wish. Well, I don't wish we would have done it. But I remember the first time I heard it, I thought it sounded like us, or it sounded like something we would have thought of. Mm-hmm. And it was I Can't Wait by New Shoes.
Oh, wow.
I remember hearing that record. I don't even know why. It was one of those things it was sitting on our board in our studio, and I walked in, and there's this New Shoes, I Can't Wait. I have no clue why it was there. And I was like, wow. And I put it on. I was like, ding, 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 ding. I was like, ooh, I like this. And then that's probably one of the records. I mean, there's probably other ones. Yeah. But that was one that, because it sounded so much like something we would do to me, It was cool.
Another sample that keeps on giving too.
Yeah, it's great. But we did a Vanessa Williams song called Happiness and used it in that song.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
So the Human League, you guys work with them, A&M Records.
Yep.
How did that situation come apart?
So after we did Control, John McClain was looking for another project for us to do on the label. And it turned out that Human League had started working on their next album. And I guess they had sent John some songs or something. And John called him and said, what are you guys trying to do? And they said, we're trying to make a Jimmy Jam and Terry Lewis record.
That's great.
And he said, well, why don't you just get them to do the record? And they were like, what do you mean? And he said, I'll call him. So he called us and he said, hey, do you like the Human League? And we said, yeah, love them. He said, you want to do their record? We said, sure. And so that was how it came together. They came to Minneapolis. Whole group came to Minneapolis. And it was a bit of culture shock, I think, on both of our sides. But it was cool. It was cool working with them. We got to a little bit of we never get in arguments with people. I mean, we just don't. But we got into a little thing with the song Human. And I remember Phil Oakey, we talked earlier about how Terry is like vocal master, right? Mm-hmm. He did Usher and he did that. So we did the same thing with Phil Oakey, because we were like, Phil Oakey, the lead singer of Human League, was like, he always was very robotic in everything that he sang. And we were like, let's see if we can get him to sing something. We got this song Human We got this concept, but you got to sing it like with some emotion, with, you know, not just robotic. And I remember one of those things where Terry works with him for probably 3 or 4 days to try to get that vocal, you know, the way where it should be. I remember when he got the vocal done, it was killer. I thought, man, oh, he killed this. So then Terry, I used to call Terry Mr. Background, because he would go in and do all the background. So on Human, where you hear the ooh, human, that's all Terry singing that, right?
Wow.
And then we had this girl named Lisa Keith, and Lisa Keith was like our secret weapon. She was like the background vocalist we used on, like if you remember Criticized by Alexander O'Neill, that that's her voice on that. Like
Making Love in the Rain.
Making Love in the Rain.
Right.
She's a girl that sang Making Love in the Rain. Yeah, so anyway, she was like the secret weapon. So we put her on the song, right? So when the group came, we played it to him. We said, hey, check this out. And we played the song, right? And so they're listening to the song. And so when it goes off, one of the girls in the group goes, I don't know, who's singing on that song? And we said, oh, it's the girl, Lisa Keith. She's like our background singer. And she says, I don't know how we feel about that other girl singing on the song. And we said, oh, okay. All right. Well, whatever. You know, we didn't really think any more about it. We just, whatever. So the next day, and I will say that the girl that mentioned that was also Phil's girlfriend, Phil Oakey's girlfriend.
So she was in the group?
She was in the group.
Wow.
Yeah, the dark-haired girl. So there was a blonde girl and a dark-haired girl. So the dark-haired girl was his girlfriend, right? So anyway, the next day, come back to the studio. Phil walks in the studio and he says, we said, hey, what's up, Phil? He said, hey. And he just kind of stands there. And we said, what's up? He said, I just have to say, we don't like that other girl on the track. I said, what are you talking about, man? He says, I just have to say, we don't like that other girl on the track. And Terry and I kind of looked at each other and we were like, and we said, oh. You just have to say.
Right.
You just have to
You
say.
don't like that other.
Noted.
Yes. I just have to say. We got it. We're cool. So what we ended up, we called A&M and we just said, hey, you know what? We're going to just take the song off the record.
Wow.
And they said, what are you talking about? It's a single. What are you talking about? We said, well, here's the thing. If we can't finish it the way we want to finish it, then we're not going to do it. Because we're, you know, and they were like, no, we got to figure out a way. So now this is, you know, once again, problem solving is a big part of production. So we didn't have a bridge on the song, really. That's one of the things we didn't have on the song. So Terry thought when we goes to the little center section, he wrote this thing for the girls to say, right, to talk. Because the thing was their voices didn't fit the smoothness of the song. Mm-hmm. It wasn't that they couldn't sing, it's just that their voice didn't fit the smoothness of the song. So Terry just said, I'm just going to give them this line, you know, while we were apart, I was human too, or whatever the line was. And that was absolutely brilliant. Because first of all, it was brilliant lyrically because it made it two-sided. It wasn't just the guy messing up.
Right.
It was, you had to accept what I did too, because I was human too, right? So it made it a lot more dynamic, but then it gave them a chance to be a part of the song and basically solved all the problems. Record went #1.
Wow.
And that was it. Now, I've seen them in interviews and they, you know, I don't think the experience for them was that great making the record with us.
Maybe because it was cold?
That didn't hurt. I mean, it was so cold up there,
Minnesota.
man. It didn't help, man. It was so cold up there.
Different cold in Minnesota.
Yeah,
for sure.
It was a different cold, but I'm telling you, it was culture shock though, because they weren't from London. They were from London, England. They were from Sheffield, England. They were from a little small town in England, and I think it was a lot of just kind of weird stuff. So I don't think it went as smooth as, you know. Sometimes when you think about experiences, you know, the result is, to me, I guess, the bottom line, and the result was a huge hit record for them, which is what we all wanted. Mm-hmm. But I don't think maybe getting there, the destination was great, but getting to the destination, the journey was not always the easiest to get to. But I love Phil to this day. We haven't talked in years, but I'd love to talk to him. I'd love to, you know, just download with him.
Phil watches the road, so it's
yeah. Was that one of the records he played out and he talked about? Or no? Wow.
Yeah, we talked about Human because we talked about my love of major seventh chords and how that kind of shaped my songwriting on the piano. And when I used to play those chords, and Terry, it was funny when we first tried to write songs together, Terry was so much into like Parliament Funkadelic, like he was into the funky stuff. And so he'd come up with like something really funky, and then I'd put these pretty chords over the top, and he'd be go, no. or I'd put these pretty chords, and then he'd put some funk over it. I go, no. And really, it'd just be good to me, once again, to mention that song. That was one of the first songs where the chords are really pretty. If you just listen to the chords of that song, really pretty, but the bass and the everything is, I like, it's like, so that was kind of the time when we figured out I think we call it the funky bottom and the pretty top.
That's kind of you guys in a nutshell. Is the
yeah.
That's what it was.
Kind of like a big dirty bass line and big drums, and then a pretty piano line over it.
Exactly.
They call that song, I'm not sure if you're aware, but they call Just Be Good to Me the first side piece song.
Right. Definitely.
Because of the lyrics.
Yeah, definitely a side piece song.
They say that's the first side piece song.
That is true. That is true.
Well, like, hopefully we'll see you in Vegas. I heard you might be in Vegas. There's talks of it.
Well, yeah, I know. Well, see, the thing is that Janet's going to be in Vegas, of course, doing her residency.
Right,
Yep.
right.
And the thought was kind of a last minute thought that kind of, little DJing, maybe a little storytelling or something with that audience that's there to just kind of expand upon the music that they've just heard. I think, I can't remember how many songs she does in the residency now. I remember on her other show, she was doing like 37 songs and like 33 of them were ours. And so to kind of tell the stories of those songs and do that and play and show the samples and where the songs come from. So kind of it allows, it's a great after party vibe, I think. Yeah. And so we're talking about, possibly doing so. I mean, it's upcoming really quickly, but I would love to do that. And I just think it would be the perfect audience to do it. I told Janet, we were talking the other day and she said, oh my God, you haven't DJ'd in so long. And I said, yeah, you retired me from DJing. you had a pretty big hit record that made me pretty busy as a producer. So, you changed that.
Did the thought of coming back to DJing also kind of get inspired by Anderson .Paak and
definitely
DJ Pee Wee? Because I know you reached out to Eddie, who was kind of DJing and like kind of vinyl curating for Anderson .Paak.
I'll tell you, for me, it actually started before that, but that was probably the solidifying thing. I remember seeing Questlove DJ, and I loved how it was, it wasn't like I'm just playing a bunch of club records. It was like I'm really going through just the kind of the history of things and the way he would blend things together. I thought that was really cool. And then I watched Jermaine Dupri play. And Jermaine Dupri was I had no idea he could DJ that guy. I was like, man, okay, so those kinds of things those kinds of things made me like think about, oh, wait, if he can do that, maybe I should think about doing that. And then the DJ Pee Wee thing was kind of the icing on the cake, because we took Janet, I remember her birthday in Vegas back when Silk Sonic was playing. And right across is that Off the Record club.
On the record.
Yeah. On the record. Is that what it is? On the record. And so he was DJing there, and he DJ'd like the whole after party, which was great. And we were hanging out. And that's when it was kind of in my mind like, okay, this seems like this would be really fun.
Yeah.
And there's so many DJs that have reached out to me in such a kind way, because I've asked for advice, and I've asked, a couple of people, like, what would be, if there was a Jam and Lewis set, maybe 30, 45 minutes or whatever, but there was just a set, what would you want it to be? And everybody sent me great suggestions and great mashup ideas and great stuff. And I said, here's the thing, I'll credit you. It's not like I'm trying to be like, oh, I came up with all this stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, I'd love to ID everybody and just go, here's my Jazzy Jeff mixer, here's my, whatever. And really just give shine to DJs, because it's so much a part of my DNA and kind of where I started, and I appreciate it. And also it's a team effort, because we can make the records, but if nobody hears the records, it doesn't mean anything. It's the tree that falls in the forest. So you guys are so important to what it is. And like I say, it's a partnership.
You guys, we're so important.
No, you guys are important. You guys.
Right now that you mentioned that, I was wondering, would you ever bring in the DJs aspect for the Grammys and stuff to help choose what, it's really chosen the right way? Because we're in the front lines, we see the reaction to things. So I was just wondering, when you said that, Did you ever think of bringing DJs into the Grammys selection and voting process of that?
Well, there are more DJs now that are members. Once again, it's one of those things where because of the eligibility, you had to have released like 6 recorded songs in order to be, considered to even be on the voting committee or that kind of thing, or the voting part. But now, because it's invitation, it's one of those things where if people want to join, they can ask for a recommendation from somebody who's already there.
Yeah.
And if that person says, oh yeah, they'd be perfect to have, then they're in. And so that to me is a great way to get more DJs in, because there are DJs that are in. And now if you know, or you can say, would you write me a recommendation letter or whatever, then to me, then that's how we grow that population and make sure that side of it gets done in a good way.
Yeah,
so the mechanism is in place.
Before we end this podcast, by the way, Jimmy Jam, thank you so much for coming through.
Thank you guys. Appreciate it.
Amazing.
We've been kind of advocating for these like kind of open format DJ producers to like remix existing catalogs. So I've been talking to artists, and there's a new site called Beat Source, which is they finally kind of had all the labels agree to be able to remix any song on the catalog.
I love that.
And basically, the artist, the label, and the editor or the producer who's remixing that track, everyone will get a split. And it's like a first streaming DJ app. It's kind of like Spotify, but for DJs.
Yes.
And it actually links up in your Serato.
Okay.
So
I love that.
But I would love maybe if we could have some of these acapellas for some of these, Jimmy Jam and Terry Lewis, and kind of give some of these DJ producers access to that. That
like Kate Tronada, he did the If remix. I know you heard that.
The If remix is amazing.
Yeah.
Not to go off on another story, but that's how I met Kate Tronada. Wow. I never had met him before. And he was at Coachella. This was probably 5 years ago, 6 years, maybe something like that. And we were in, there's a kind of a fine dining area that it's actually, so the guy who, the big Laker fan, I can't remember his name. He sits next to Jack Nicholson at the Lakers games.
Adler?
Lou Adler. Thank you. Lou Adler. Ding, 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 ding,
Big
ding,
Laker
ding,
fan.
ding.
Let's go, Ross.
I love that.
Let's go, Ross.
So Lou Adler's son was running this kind of fine dining place at Coachella where you could go in and have like a really nice dinner. So me and my wife went in and did it. And Paige hooked us up, his wife, and we did it. It was great. So the tent right next door to where we were eating there were DJs playing, right? So all of a sudden, I'm listening to the DJs and they sound great. And all of a sudden I hear the If mix come on. And I know it's Kate Tronada. And I was like, oh, it's Kate Tronada. I said, I know that. I recognize this. I recognize this. So when the dinner was over, we were walking back and he had just finished his set and he came back outside. And my wife said, what does he look like? And I said, he's kind of, and she said, is that him there? And I said, oh my God. And I said, Kate Tronada. And he came up to me, he said, Jimmy Jam. He said, what's up? And we talked, had a great conversation. And that's how I met him for the first time.
Wow.
And now we text each other all the time. He's just so amazing to me musically in what he does. But yeah, man, I mean, I just admire people that are creative like that. And I kind of helped him get, I know he was trying to get that cleared for the longest time, like get it like for real cleared.
Right.
And I talked to his manager and I talked to a whole bunch of people and I was able to connect him, I think, with the right people on the other side, on Janet's side. And I think they've got it come to some sort of an agreement finally now, so which is great. So I was glad I was once again able to just kind of facilitate making that kind of stuff.
Well, you'll be doing that for the app if you have
Yeah,
to
I
do
mean,
it.
I would love to see a Jimmy Jam and Terry Lewis, like, almost the same thing where there's all these like kind of reworked remixes from, upcoming DJ producers.
I'd love that.
Yeah.
I'd love that. Once again, I love our music being used. If it inspires people or creates new ideas for people, I'm totally in favor of it. I totally love it. I think it's, the connection of music is like no other. So
awesome.
I'm totally with it.
That's beautiful.
Man, what a pleasure. Jimmy Jam, from Jimmy Jam and Terry Lewis, thank you so much for sitting with us.
Absolutely.
This is incredible.
Whenever you want to have DJ talk, hit us up.
We'll hopefully see you in Vegas.
Yeah, I hope so. I hope that works out. That'll be a lot of fun.
And real quick, stay away from DJ Twitter.
Jimmy Jam, thank you so much.
Yeah. Thank you guys. Thank you guys.
If you want to watch more episodes from R.O.A.D Podcast, click either links on the left or the right. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube page and get updated on new uploads throughout the week. Peace.